Good evening, everyone. Good to see you guys. It's Thursday, May 12th, 2022, 5:30 p.m. This is the North Clackamas work session, North Clackamas School Board work session. We have one thing on our agenda this evening, equitable grading practices and ninth grade teams. We have Yvonne, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm calling you that. I'm looking straight at you too. Yvonne Dibley is here to guide us in it. So I'll pass it over to you.
Great to see you, Chair Ford and directors. It is with great pleasure that we bring this information to you. Tonight, you're going to hear how we have taken a variety of steps this year that connect both equitable grading practices or grading for equity, as well as ninth grade teams. I'm happy to have Dr. Petra Callan, who is the Executive Director of Secondary Programs, Coordinator of Data Analysis and Accountability, Dr. Ryan Richardson, Rex Putnam High School Principal, with me this evening to share much of this information. We are also happy to have the Alder Creek teacher team join us for the Q&A at the end of the presentation, so you can ask them questions about their firsthand experience. And I guess what I'd like to say before I turn it over to Dr. Callan is that we are committed to continuing to challenge our practices in order to advance student learning by focusing on each student's experience, their well-being, and their potential. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Callan.
Hey, good evening, directors. It is nice to be here with you this evening. I am going to be, sharing my screen. And whoop. Was I successful? Yes, everyone.
Looks good. Looks good.
Great. As I have to tell you, earlier today, my computer did not want to share its screen. So there was a little bit of time of some concern, but I'm glad that I got that working. As Dr. Dibley was talking about, we're here to talk about equitable grading practices in ninth grade teams. And the two subjects really live together really very nicely, but we're going to start with the grading practices and then move into the ninth grade teams. So equitable grading, and this is you'll see this is a quote from Joe Feldman, but he really kind of outlines the primary tenets of this quite nicely. Equitable grading has three pillars: accuracy, bias resistance, and intrinsic motivation. Grades must accurately reflect only a student's academic level of performance, exclude non-academic criteria such as behavior, and use mathematically sound calculations and scales, such as the 0 to 4 instead of the 0 to 100 scale. Grading practices must counteract institutional biases that have historically rewarded students with privilege and punish those without, and also must protect student grades from our own implicit biases. So as we think about what grading should be, we center what is accurate, what resists bias, which essentially really focuses on what evidence do we have of the student learning and content knowledge, and also motivation for students to understand where they're at any time and understand what they need to do to achieve. And so as we're looking at how to grade in an equitable way, it really should be reflecting student learning. And our grades don't always only reflect what student learning is. So our challenges are varied. We have disparate grading practices. Teachers use different scales. Teachers have different philosophies on grading. So at a high school, for example, a student with 8 classes can experience 8 different grading systems and have to navigate through those. And grading systems can often reflect behavior. So for example, an example of that is whether you turn things in on time or whether you are tardy to class. And while those are things that teachers may have concern about and are, they really don't reflect the actual learning and the actual proficiency a student may be able to demonstrate. So in this year, and Ryan said this earlier, and I really picked it up, it's really been about invitation. And we have been inviting our entire system to really think a lot more critically about what our grading practices are and what it means to have equitable grading practices. And this really, I see this this impetus being really born out of CDL and the pandemic, because what we really realized in our system is that how we were thinking about assessing and evaluating students wasn't working for us, and we needed to start thinking differently. So I see a lot of motivation to be really examining what our underlying philosophies are, what our belief systems are about grading, and working together to start thinking differently. So in our instructional leadership team, which is our school administrative team, there has been a renewed focus on this particular topic when we come together in professional development. Additionally, schools have engaged in maybe book studies or full staff discussions or small group PLC kind of work to really look at what their practices are and how they can think differently about them. And there are some teams that have been piloting proficiency as standards-based work using different kinds of scales and rubrics. So I think the work has been widespread and has really come from this sort of grassroots place of us understanding as professional educators together that we need to think about doing things differently.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to talk to you all about a way that we're trying to bring the ideas of grading for equity out of that philosophical realm we were just talking about and into practice in the classroom. And I'm going to talk about a tool that we're using called a standards-based gradebook. And to show why we're using this approach, I'm going to focus on something Petra said a couple slides ago that stood out as a very measurable data point. She said students can have 8 different classes with 8 different grading systems, some of which can potentially reflect behavior and include implicit biases. And that's a big statement. So I want you to quantify first if that is true at North Clackamas, and if so, how it manifests itself here. So what you're looking at here is the distribution of grades, percentage of A, B, C, D, et cetera, for a handful of classes that we would expect to have very similar outcomes. So this is 8 different sets of students who share the same teacher for the same class, and this is the distribution of those grades that were given in those classes. Okay, so this is, and I'll tell you how this is apples to apples here and why we expect it to be the same. It's an untracked class. This is English 10, it's sophomore English. So it's a class every student has to take. It's not grouped by ability level. There's no advanced alternative to take for this credit. And I wanted to make sure it was really apples to apples. So this is only teachers who have, 2 or 3 classes at least of English 10. So we have a good sample size for each of these graphs you're looking at. So each of one represents at least 50 students taking English 10 who share the same teacher. And I wanted to make sure these groups were all actually untracked, just to really remove all of our indicators. So in our system, sometimes when we say classes are untracked, they can sometimes be tracked unintentionally because of maybe where a certain elective lands that leads students from a certain background to take that elective, and it creates some unintentional tracking. So I just made sure that each of these sets of students have representation by race, by socioeconomic status, and by percentages of students receiving special education and English language learner services that's in line with our North Clackamas averages. So I removed the predictors, tried to make this as apples to apples as possible with an untracked class. And if we had aligned grading practices, we would expect these all to look very similar. But we see they don't. And what we see is that it seems to visualize what Petra was saying about our students having to negotiate a variety of approaches to instruction and assessment practices where we would expect the outcomes to be similar. I just want to be real clear before we move on from the slide. This data doesn't say that one of these teachers is more accurate than the other or better or any of those things. All this says all this points to is that the outcome of our grading practices is inconsistent in a place where we would expect it to be consistent. And so one thing we're trying to do to refine our grading practices is by making sure that a student's grade is directly tied and solely tied to the goals of their learning by removing all other factors as much as possible. And that's proficiency-based grading, okay? So proficiency-based grading or standards-based grading it's a move towards a calibrated understanding of what a student learns based solely on learning targets or standards. So the question is no longer how much work did you complete to show your understanding? The question shifts to, did you learn the concept? Did you learn the standard? Are you proficient in the academic goal we were trying to reach? Okay. Now I made the shift myself my last few years when I was teaching in the classroom. And when I was making the shift, one of my initial questions was, can I do proficiency-based grading with fidelity with our traditional grading tools, with the traditional grade book, percentages and all that? So I'm going to show you an example now that looks at the differences between how a proficiency-based grading model works and how a traditional grading model works to communicate learning. Okay, so here is our thought experiment. We are running a parachute packing school. Okay, 2 students are learning to pack parachutes. It's a 5-week course. Each week, they basically are given 5 parachutes that they have to pack. And if they correctly pack the parachute and you would float safely to the ground, you get 100%. And if it would fail to open and you would fall horrifically to your doom, you get a 0. So that's pretty much how the grading scale is going to work on this. There's not much in between there. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. This is how the students would do, looking at just the percentages of how they did in packing their parachutes, those 25 parachutes. So, I'm a numbers person. So if I had to stake my life, and this is all the data I had, I would stake my life on student A, right? But let's look at the next slide. And this is more the proficiency model of how to look at things, okay? So student A started in a great place, right? But they didn't make any progress. And by the end of their 5-week course, there's still a 1 in 5 chance you're going to die horrifically. Student B started in a really rough spot, but they really got to a place where, in their last 2 weeks, they packed 10 perfect parachutes in a row. So, I think if I were to now stake my life on students, I would choose student B. And probably if I ran this school, my insurance provider would probably advise me to not pass student A at all, actually, and really only to pass student B. So that is really how this proficiency-based model works, to shift in looking at, did you learn what you need to learn, as opposed to, percentages and numbers. Let's look at the next slide, because I don't remember what it is. It's this. Okay. Technical pilot that we're starting off this year. So we have our traditional grade book in Synergy, it's called, and they have a module there that we've just never used in North Clackamas called the standards-based module. And we've got a couple of teachers, a couple of groups of teachers who have turned this on and they're trying to use it. And what this standards-based module uses that they're piloting, it provides a more equitable grading scale, that 1 through 4 we were talking about. And it provides standards-based feedback to families, which I think is really cool. We'll take a look at what that looks like. It still aggregates into an overall A through F on the report card and the transcript. So colleges are still going to see what they expect to see. Families are going to see what they expect to see on the report card, but the progress a student makes as they work through class is going to be provided in a standards-based way. Okay, I got 3 PLCs working on this right now. A small group of teachers at New Urban, a small group of teachers, cross-school PLC from the comprehensive high schools, and a rock star team from Alder Creek Middle School, who had already before this year done a lot of the prep work. When we're shifting systems, you have to do a lot of prep work philosophically and in your practice and your instruction to make such a big shift. And they had already done a lot of that work and they have hit the ground running. And some of them are on this call right now to answer questions for you. And so they're going to be there for the Q&A at the end. Let's see the next slide. Okay, so if a student logs into student view right now, parent view, to see their grades, this is the grading scale they'll see in their standards-based pilot classes. It's a 1 through 4. Basically, 3 means you get it, proficient. 4, you've gone above and beyond. 2, you're really close. And as a teacher, if you got a 2, I can probably tell you what you got to do to get to a 3. A big discussion we're having right now is around that NE and whether to give zeros. If something's missing, how do we deal with that? And all the PLCs are kind of talking about it in a different way. So it's been an evolving discussion with all of us. Let's see the next slide. Okay, and here, if you look in parent view, student view at how your student's doing, you can see the student's getting a B right now. But instead of getting that traditional list of assignments with percentages, you're getting standards. It's being communicated as standards. So you can see the student, it's a science class, they're rocking it on standards 2, 3, and 4 there. They got the green, they're up near the 4, they're doing really good. but they're struggling with number one. And as a teacher, I think this is the thing I think that's the most interesting. The student can now go to the teacher and they can say, hey, you know what? I'm struggling to model and explain the motion and relative position of particles in each phase and how that is associated with energy, right? Which as a teacher, that's a way more interesting discussion to have with a student than, hey, how can I get some extra credit? Or how do I get 2 or 3 more points? The learning is tied directly to what the student's supposed to be learning. The grades tie directly to what they're learning. That's the goal with this. Let's look at the next slide. Okay, the PLCs, we meet every other week to collect data on how this is going, and what we really revolve our protocol in collecting data, it's really around student and family reactions to these grading shifts, and then also how teachers can use graded data to help inform instruction, okay? Because we can change our grading systems till we're blue in the face, but until we're coming full circle and affecting our instruction to help students learn better and do more things that way, we're not really going to change our systems. We're just going to change the way they look. So that's what we're really focusing on in our discussions every 2 weeks with the PLCs. And you can ask the Alder Creek folks a little bit more about that later if you'd like. I think, is there another slide? Oh yeah. Okay. This slide, I wasn't sure if the teachers could make it, and I'm so grateful they're here, but I tried to take just some quotes from our meetings that we could go over if we had to, if they weren't here. I know you all got this in advance and already looked at this, so I'm going to skip this slide to save some more time at the end for the Q&A, and I'm going to pass the mic back to Petra. So.
All right, thank you. So what we know is that structured collaboration is essential for all of us as professional educators in order to shift our practice, in order to work together to get to different outcomes. As Doug was talking about the Alder Creek group, that is an excellent example of what we mean by effective structured collaboration. And another example of this is our 9th grade teams. And I'm going to let Doug talk a little bit more about the background behind these, but these are also a way that we have worked for several years to shift practice with our 9th grade group.
Right, so 9th grade teams, similar teacher collaboration. So you've got groups of teachers who teach the same cohort of 9th grade students. And so they share the same students, and they meet every week or every other week to look at the data around the students and try to think of ways that they can shift their instruction to help more students reach success. So they focus on the data around their students, and they meet every week or every 2 weeks to help just, refine their instructional practices to help more students. This is research-based. It's based on research from the University of Chicago that was done a while ago, and it's still ongoing research. And that research shows a correlation between 9th grade on-track rates and graduation rates, okay? So that's what Chicago showed that. And then the further research they've been doing shows the impact of these, what I just described, the frequent cycles of teacher-led, data-driven student interventions, okay? So that's 9th grade teams. Our goal for this, our data point goal, is that on track? Do you have 6 credits by the end of August, your 9th grade year? Because we see that correlates, or Chicago saw that correlates to the on-track graduation rate. And let's look at the next slide. I think I've got my data there. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that this was what happened in Chicago was relevant to North Clackamas. So I did the same analysis they did. And what we see here is there is indeed a very strong correlation, very significant correlation between our on-track rates historically and our on-time graduation rate. So that's what this slide shows.
Right. So our schools have been implementing professional learning communities for many years, but this particular model of 9th grade teaming, which is really best done when you have a multidisciplinary group that works with a discrete group of students, and oftentimes we might call those academies, houses, or teams. For example, you may have your science teacher, an English teacher, and a social studies teacher. In this model, it's best done when they are working together to really focus on what's happening with the learning of the students that they share. So Rex Putnam in Milwaukee embarked on this collaboration starting in the 2018-19 school year. And Clackamas High School came along, and as well as Adrian C. Nelson High School, when they broke into smaller schools and implemented this particular structure.
All right, I'm going to jump in here and share a little bit about the data that you're. So these are our students that are currently on track. And the left-hand column there is our 9th graders, and moving from left to right, our 10th, 11th, and 12th. And what's notable is, excuse me, the dip between freshman and sophomore year. And this tells me the story of what happens when we have freshman teams and collaborative teachers that are working together to support our students in a cohort model, and what happens when that goes away their sophomore year. And it tells me that the energy and the work that is happening at the freshman year is paying off. On the next slide, you'll see all the blue columns are freshman year. This slide is really dissecting that 9th to 10th grade comparison and looking a little carefully about what's going on here. And so each set of bar graphs is by school. The blue is your freshman data, and your orange is your sophomore data according to each school. And again, you can see these dips that are occurring across the way. What I think is interesting about this and worth noting is now Rex Putnam's data, we were looking at the smallest gap there. And so you might be wondering what's going on there. We've been in freshman teaming for 4 years now. And one of the major transitions we've made is moving away from technical and individual solution-oriented teams. So these are things like study hall after school, or I'm gonna call this particular parent to help this particular student. Those are wonderful things, but we've moved past that to really talk about tier 1 interventions. And what I mean by a tier 1 intervention is, what is an intervention, an instructional intervention that we can apply to the entire cohort within our team. So the next slide will show you some of the work that we've been doing at Rex Putnam. That speaks to that idea of tier 1 interventions and how our teams are operating. First, I think it's really important that our administrative team has been hands-on. We've been going into each of those freshman team meetings. Each administrator is in charge of a team. And so that's been a really positive collaboration between administrators and teams. Our teacher teams have been moving beyond the technical interventions that I mentioned before. And I think that might be one of the reasons why you're seeing a smaller dip. When we're talking about tier 1 interventions, that starts to shift the culture of the school, not just the team. One other thing I'll mention too at Rex Putnam is our English teachers loop. And so they follow a 9th grade student to their 10th grade year as well. And so the interventions and the teamwork that the freshman teamwork that those English teachers had their 9th grade year, they're now following up 10th grade and again, expanding to those 10th grade teachers. So we're starting to build a culture around intervention and teaming strategies, even though we're technically only doing it freshman year. So you might be thinking, what are some of those tier 1 interventions? What are you referring to? And so those small bullet points at the bottom start to pinpoint a few ideas, things like structured student-teacher dialogue sessions or activities focused on student and teachers co-constructing ways to improve engagement. That looks like classroom discussions about our community norms, or how do we want to demonstrate our learning on this particular assignment. Students are starting to co-create that with teachers. Another is reflection on student climate surveys. One of the big things that we saw from our youth truth data was that students are not seeing the relevance of what they're doing in classrooms to their lives outside of classrooms. What's our tier 1 intervention? Before every unit, our teachers started deliberately and intentionally sharing how how the work they're doing in units will help them outside of classrooms. And then after the unit, students can reflect on, how is this helping me outside of the classroom? It's a simple strategy, but we're looking at the student data. We're looking at instructional framework around grading for equity that you just heard about, and systems for providing positive feedback for students school-wide. Well, there was a team that wrote hand notes to every individual student about how they were doing that, and it was positive in nature, and also a little feedback on what they can improve on, but very positive spirit to those notes. So those are some ideas and some things that are happening at Rex Putnam.
Okay, thank you. So as we're moving on into next steps, because we're constantly growing, for our 9th grade teams, and actually really for everything that we're doing, focus on ensuring equitable access to programming, to academic success, to college and career readiness, and make sure that we don't have any barriers in place, and make sure that we provide the teams that are working toward this the support that they need in that level of collaborating around data analysis and tier 1 core instruction, as Ryan was really referring to. And, additionally, specifically around grading for equity, we need to be continuing the professional development, the conversations, looking toward more consistency across our system, really looking carefully at our assessment practices and how we understand our assessment tied to student knowledge and what our learning targets are. And to really also strengthen our communications between families and students, so that we really are all together focusing on student learning. Ooh, so that was a lot in a short period of time. And I know we have several people on this call, and I hope we have our Alder Creek folks here too to answer any questions that you have.
Should we introduce the Alder Creek teachers?
Please do.
Okay, I see we've got Jen Martin. Jen, do you want to say hi? There we go. And we've got we've got Jess Ogden as well.
Hey, everybody.
All right. And I guess we'll just open the floor to questions.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys for this wonderful presentation. I'm going to open the floor for questions. Orlando and Stephen, if you can raise your hand so I can see you, and then I'll give you the floor. Okay, we'll start with Director Schradel.
As it relates to the grading 1 through 4, what grades is this proposed or being done in? I mean,
are you talking the conversion from the 1 through 4 to the A through F?
yes.
Yeah, there. We should have put that in the slide. Actually, we took the scale of conversion that Salem, Kaiser, and Beaverton are using. So we took that same scale that they're using, which is like 1 to 1.6 is an F, and then it's just kind of spread out evenly from there. So
Yeah, my daughter, or 3 of my children, have gone through Cascade Heights, and they have the same rating system. And the only challenges from a parent who's experienced this is when it goes to high school or when you go to college, if you were K through 12 with that, the colleges would be contacting the school district to say, what does that equate to? And that happened to all of our children going through from 8th to high school. Was we don't do that. Not to say that it hasn't changed and been adopted more with other school districts, but do you anticipate we will have lots of questions about what is this grading system?
Well, in our transitionary use of it, we have it converting already to an A through F. So anything another school would see on a transcript, and even anything a parent sees on a report card at the end result, is an A through an F. So,
Which is perfect.
Trado,
That was the lacking part, was the matrix or the rubric to convert.
Yeah.
And Director Schrader, what I would add to that conversation is that this is why it's so important to partner with families and really walk through what these changes mean, because traditionally we are used to a certain grading system. And we know that universities and colleges are changing their grading systems as well. We have a lot of districts that are changing the grading systems, and change means that we have to demystify those prior experiences so we can do better by the moves that we're making.
And the last comment is just for planting this seed. The other challenge was I've experienced where a lot of teachers don't give out the 4 because it's hinted that being a 4 means you're basically a student who can come up and do a mic drop, the teacher can go home kind of situation. So if it's not obtainable, if people can't get 4s, then 3 is the 4. And that's always been the challenge as well.
Jen, do you want to contribute to that? I see your hand up.
I would love to. I think that's been one of the most exciting areas for us as teachers to collaborate on, is what would a 4 look like? If a 3 is you meet this standard, what would a student need to do in order to show that they are past the standard? And It's really led to some creative conversations among colleagues about what that looks like. And I like how I like the idea of like demystifying what the grade means. We have been writing rubric after rubric after rubric for any assignment that's now going to go into the gradebook has a rubric that's written in student-centered language that takes the standard and then dissects it. So kids know before they even start working on the assignment or the assessment, what they need to do to get a 3, and then how they can take it to the next step to get a 4. And so there's some kids that are fine with just showing proficiency, but then the kids who want to get that 4, they have very clear, they have a rubric in front of them that shows what that's going to look like. And it's been a lot of fun to develop those rubrics and think about what a 4 would look like.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? Director Way?
Can everyone hear me? Okay, yay. Okay. I do have a couple questions. First of all, I'm just really glad that we are taking an equitable approach when it comes to grading. I think that's fabulous. My question was around the connection between these efforts and Measure 98, which we know Measure 98, right, help funded dropout prevention and just kind of more specific academic intervention for students. So that was like one piece. And then the second piece was, I'm thinking about the new strategic plan that we're working on for the next several years and just wondering if, like, how does this fit into, right, just the strategic plan that we're developing? So yeah, those were just my two questions that I had.
I can answer the Measure 98 question for sure. That grant pays for a great deal of the collaboration. And as you know, it is a high school focused grant. So, and we can support some 8th grade middle school work in some instances, but there is a great deal of support specifically for the 9th grade teaming. We have, be looking at having a teacher on special assignment that's going to be working very closely with those particular 9th grade teams. Doug, for example, is a center, like he's in the middle of all of that, and he works with the Center for High School Success and the 9th grade teams and administrators. So, and then the time that it takes to collaborate is also supported. And I have been able to also support the some with time, which is we're always lacking, but with some paid time also for like the Alder Creek team, for example, and some other teams to be able to do this really important work.
Yeah. And Director Way, under the strategic plan, the pillar student experiences and success, there are 2 specific goals that really speak to assessment and feedback that we're providing students. And I think so much of what our teachers in the work is showing is that students are having agency and wanting to know how to better achieve, and they are taking the initiative. It is not the teacher controlling what the grade is or how the grade is. It is the students understanding how to achieve a grade or how to show proficiency. So seeing that shift is really aligned with what we've had conversations in regarding the strategic plan and how we're moving forward with that. Additionally, our instructional exec team is planning and beginning the planning process for next year. So again, thinking about what have we learned this year and how do we keep that momentum so that we can continue to strategize in the various efforts, because you can see that there's technical aspects of the work, there's mind shift aspects of the work, and then also working with student engagement.
Great, thank you.
Director McVeigh?
Okay. Love this work. I think it's great. I have a question though. Is late and sloppy work an academic indicator or a behavior indicator?
if anybody wants to take it, I mean, for me, that's a behavior indicator because it is not showing the actual progress, or it is not showing evidence in the standard. So that is something that we are trying to move away from, is looking at those behavior aspects and treating those as behavior, but really focusing in on success criteria. And if anybody wants to add to that, I'm happy to have you add.
I guess I would just ask the group then, so to turn our students out for ready for the real world, where's that discussion happening? Like in the real world, you can't have late work, or it can't look like this. I mean, I like the idea that it's not part of maybe the academic like proficiency, but where's that discussion happening and what's it sound like? Or is there a discussion?
Absolutely. I'm sure that our teachers have plenty of examples, and that is the modeling that happens as we talked about the rubrics that are presented to a classroom. Usually a teacher would have a modeled example of, what professional work looks like or what a finished product looks like. And I'll have our teachers actually provide additional examples.
I would say I've just noticed such a shift in the way that they're thinking about their learning and the way they're thinking about how they're showing up in a classroom. When I first started teaching and was really using this traditional method of grading, it was always a race for the points. What can I do? How can I get my points up? Like, how many points do I need to get from a C to a B? And recently I had a student come to me with one of these rubrics, which Jen was talking about. You can just see it's really brief, outlining what they need to do at each level of proficiency. And this student said to me, this was marked that there wasn't enough evidence to show that I understand this, but now I think that I really do. So could I show it to you and you can give me some feedback on my proficiency? And that moment this year was really like, oh my gosh, like this is coming together and this is working. This kid is in touch with her learning and what that means for her. And so I think when we think about preparing our students for the real world, I mean, this is an 11 and 12-year-old student who's really engaging in some intense metacognition and advocating for herself. And I feel like that is a super solid real world skill, as opposed to thinking about how can I average these points to get from a C to a B in this one teacher's class. Like, these are really transferable skills. And it's teaching students to love learning and to be in charge of their own learning, because we're giving them such authentic, clear feedback that they can then use to build on.
I feel like learning to not be late is such a not cognitive thing. You can learn to not be late by getting fired the first time you're late. It's almost like a life lesson that you can learn in more effective ways than being stigmatized for it in the classroom, especially because it's really difficult for us to tell why every student is late. And there's a wide variety of reasons that sometimes students have no control over around being late, especially with our diverse backgrounds here in North Clackamas. So.
Director Benaloga.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions surrounding special education. How is this rubric going to work, or how would this proficiency-based grading work with our special education classrooms?
Go ahead, Jess.
Oh, thanks. I currently teach a co-taught math class. And so I have a learning specialist who co-plans and co-executes lessons with me and supports students. And so she has a very strong voice in designing the rubrics. And this is a very isolated incident, and it would take a lot of intentionality to make it system-wide. But we have agreed in our rubric that a student needing a certain level of support would demonstrate that they have not yet met the standard. And so that in the rubric would be a 2 on that, which translates in the system, as Doug was speaking about, that would translate to a C. So that student is approaching proficiency and given lots of support and opportunities to increase their proficiency and to redemonstrate that skill. And historically in math classrooms, when it's in every assignment is for points. Our students on IEPs who have a variety of learning needs, organization, maybe one of them, so that the idea of like averaging assignment points really builds a hole for our students, especially our students with learning disabilities, our students on IEPs, that they can't really get themselves out of. So to have specific evaluations that are evaluating their skills and their proficiency and not how many assignments they have managed to turn in over the course of the semester gives them actually more accurate feedback and a way to continue their proficiency.
Okay, thank you. And then just one quick question about what are the plans to make sure that our parents and our community understand the new grading system? Obviously it's going to take a shift in knowledge and a shift in what I need to see in order to know that my student is doing well. So what are the plans to really communicate that to our parents?
That's a really good question, and it was missing from our presentation. So even part of the pilot, that's been a big concern. As part of the pilot, the communication home to families, we decided to lay out we worked with the communications department to lay out 3 sets of letters that went home, one before we started doing it, one 2 weeks after it started with some more information to say, hey, this is what you might be starting to see, and this is why it's important. And then one just before the end of the quarter, another letter went out saying, hey, quarter's coming to an end. This is how this is working. So we're looking at ways to do that, I guess. And the question really there would be really for the teachers of how effective has that been, or what do you think is the best way to communicate home with families? What have you heard from families? So
we've had a lot of support from our families. I think that the biggest thing is changing the narrative in the way that we talk about grades with students. And then that language, I think, also transfers to home. I definitely think it's important to teach families about this shift. But I've noticed even with students, similar stories to what Jess shared about students coming up to me with an assignment or a rubric and saying, I've reworked this, what do you think? And in my communication with parents, that's starting to shift as well. Like, not what can my student do to get an A, but where is my student struggling with which standards or which concepts, and what do they still need to work on in order to show proficiency with that standard. So I think it's going to be a gradual change, but at least for those of us so Jess and there's all 4 of the teachers in the 6th grade dual language immersion team, we're all part of this pilot. And it feels like it hasn't taken a very long time for parents to really get used to the system. And it's really easy to see on parent view. You can look at it by standard, or you can look at it by assignment. And to me, it feels much clearer as far as what we're communicating home to parents through our grade book than before. Because before it was just a number and random points. And now you can actually see the assignment, and you can actually see the standard. And sometimes there's more than one standard connected to an assignment, and you can see that. And you can see if they've had several opportunities to meet the same standard. That's all there in Synergy and in Parent View. So I think it's a much more effective way to communicate with parents is through the grade book.
All right, thank you. And I have one more quick question about our English language learners. How are we going to discern the language barrier with understanding the concept?
I think that's a really good question. And Jen and I work with language learners, but we also speak the language that is their first language. So it's something that we can navigate around. I don't have a direct answer to your question. I think it's really poignant and needs to be discussed. But I think one of the ways that Grading for Equity and this model frees us up as teachers is that we can collect evidence from students in a variety of ways. So perhaps, with science, perhaps it's the model that they're able to draw. So, or a conversation that they have with somebody in their native language, or there's just a lot of ways that we can gather evidence of their proficiency as opposed to the number of assignments they've completed over a quarter.
And what I would add to that question is that quite often a grade-based system that is points related hurts language learners more so than standards, because standards, given the variety of examples that they have to provide proficiency and to show proficiency and to show that evidence almost eliminates the language barrier because they are able to provide that evidence in a variety of ways. So I would say that we are supporting our linguistic diversity more so with a standard-based grading system.
Yeah, I want to add to that too, because I really think that when we think about, if you start ahead of another student, you could get if you have a bonus for that in the percentage-based grading, if you do that first assignment really well, you've got the bonus. And as we saw with the parachute packing person, they started, a little bit lower and they had to work their way up. Starting ahead gives you a bonus. And if you start behind, you don't get a bonus for catching up fast or anything like that. So it shows, it surfaces our inequities, I guess. Our traditional grading book tends to surface our inequities.
Director Perez.
Remember to unmute. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. I have two questions, and I just my question is, and I don't know if this, I'm gonna try to ask it so it's not. So I think one of the slides said something about, let me see if I can find it here real quick. It said something about, which is really awesome as far as assessing a student's academic level of performance and standardizing it. That's really cool. But my question is, because we don't live in a perfect world, and a lot of kids who enter our classrooms and walk through the doors have a lot of stuff going on at home. So what's the standard practice, or what is the standard practice for non-academic, to address non-academic criteria if you have a child with behavior?
What I would say, oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
My first thought is that we teach them those behaviors and set them up for success and scaffold those behaviors without tying them to a grade.
Yep.
A follow-up question to that. So
I'm sorry, Director Shertle. I have one other board member I need to get to before we come back around. So
Go ahead.
hold on a second. Director Perez, are you done?
Yeah, that answered my question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Director Bauer.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. And I really appreciate that you are focused on equitable access and the persistence of college and career. And I think you hit on that when you said the students were asking, how does this pertain to my future? And that you are then being looking and following up with students on that. So I appreciate that. And when I'm sitting here, I was thinking, okay, you're focusing on learning, not just the grade. Because I think when my kids went, my oldest daughter was like, I got to get an A, I got to get an A. And I'd say, well, what did you learn? What did you learn? So I appreciate that. And I think that will make their lives less stressful, really, and really enjoy and find that, challenge themselves to enjoy learning. So I do appreciate that. I think my one question about teachers, well, parents, students, and teachers, you've answered that. For teachers, this is new, so you will be providing some professional development. That's my first question.
Yeah, I think how we started the presentation about invitation, we do operate in a way that we want everyone to understand the benefit of doing this. I think there's nothing more motivating than hearing teacher voice and having our teacher leaders that have tried this year speak on behalf of changing that. And again, it's trying something new. So it's going to take time, and we want to scaffold and we want to support and meet teachers where they are in changing that practice.
Oh, great. Okay. And then the slide where you showed the dip from 9th to 10th, and then you specifically looked at, I think at Rex Putnam, you said that you worked with your 10th graders. So it really makes me think, should you continue those teams to the 10th grade? Is that possible? And that's my last question, but thank you for the presentation and all the information.
Yeah, thank you for that. Absolutely. The evidence says that we we should, and it's a matter of time, energy, and doing something well versus trying to do too much, right? And so by doing one grade level, two things. One, the data indicates from Chicago that if you do nothing else but freshman teams, it will have an impact by the time they're seniors. And number two, if you continue this model as sophomores and juniors and seniors, then absolutely it can make a positive impact. The older that students get, the more choice they have in their schedules, and there's some logistical conversations and questions about that. But yes, we are looking at how do we be intentional here about expanding this in a sustainable way. It's a good question.
Thank you.
Right to Strado.
I guess my concern is some of the words I'm hearing, the scaffolding and support, it's almost like I was expecting the next words to be like, oh, this is a modified diploma. So I want to make sure that we're not talking about, because we have a policy and the thing that modified diploma is as diploma, that does not mean that the students that we're preparing for don't deserve to be challenged to meet the diploma requirements and get a non-modified diploma.
Yeah, Director Schradel, specifically looking at standards provides core instruction, which if we weren't providing core instruction to students, we would be violating OCR. So really focusing on standards practices. When we talk about scaffolding and support, it is really about finding ways in which students can access the instruction and be able to provide evidence of their learning in a variety of ways, because we all have different talents, we all have different intelligences, we all have different ways in which we provide that. And the only way that this would be in the idea or the area of modification is if we were holding students to less than the standards, and that the instruction and the evidence for that instruction would be significantly modified, which also has rules and regulations about when parents are involved in that process. And there's different procedures that we would have to go under for a modified diploma. So this is in no way.
I'm completely on board with the process of that, and even being presented with hearing the word modified diploma for one of my children. So as it relates to IEP students, do we identify students that are getting a modified diploma? Do we have data on that?
Do we have data on
The number of modified diplomas each year for the last 5 years?
Yes.
Per year.
Yes, that is something that we have. It's a reportable piece
Right.
too.
And when the ORS changed to basically say not, and I do need help if I'm wrong on this as far as modified diploma is as regular diploma, when that came into effect, either by policy or ORS, did we see our numbers increase of the number of students that would be defined as modified diploma?
That I don't have at my on my hand, basically. So I will be happy to review and get back to you on when the ORS changed and what that data, how that data looked for North Clackamas.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll close out with just a couple comments. Thank you guys for your presentation. I just have two questions, but I'll start with my comments. One, I think board members that have interest in this and want to see us have a good translation for our students to arrive at their next destination smoothly, I encourage you to speak to Oregon Community College Association, other college associations, and legislators, because I think that this is a big part of the movement. This is just the beginning. I also want to say that, fear has stopped progress in the past. And I want us to be as bold as possible because that's what our kids deserve. I think this is a thorough presentation, and with thorough presentation, there needs to be boldness in order for us to move ourselves forward. And again, that's a personal opinion. I also want to state that the SSA, which is Student Success Act, is stating that it will fully fund Measure 898. And so again, as board members, I encourage you to get behind that. Make sure you're writing everyone to make sure that happens, because it sounds like this work is funded through that. The strategic plan, I love the connection to that. And I also love the connection to now we're looking to global contributors. And I think this is a great way to do that. I also want to make a statement about my personal experience. Some of you know I homeschool my kids. The homeschool curriculum I used a standard way of grading in this way. And I feel that my kids have had a better approach to their experience when they entered public school than other students. And that's just my personal experience, but I've seen this work. This is not new to the world. This has existed in other places, but I just think that it's an opportunity for us to give our kids something that really will develop them to be amazing humans. So my two questions are, this is obviously a thing that teachers need to implement, and some teachers, as we know, implement this with success and are excited, but some don't. So what's the recourse for teachers that don't?
It is written in the collective bargaining agreement that teachers have the freedom to tackle their own grading practices the way that they choose to do so. So that is why we are committed to looking towards shifting mindsets, looking at our why, understanding why we are doing the changes that we are making, and then collaborating and learning from teachers that are having great success. I was just talking to Jen the other day, and she said, I don't think I could ever go back. And so again, seeing that from their own peers and understanding that really lifts the conversations and the relationships within the classroom, I think speaks volumes and will make the shifts that we need to see. And we will continue to just support teachers every step of the way.
Love that. Then my second question is, obviously, we still have this thing called state testing. So how do these standards relate to state testing? Do we have any data that shows that it's really successful or other way, whatever that is?
On the latter part of your question, I can't give you any information or data there, but I think one of the beautiful pieces of correlating standard-based grading with state testing is that state testing really provides school districts with robust information at grade level, individual level, school level, as to what claims, what standards we are succeeding in, where we are lacking. And so as a system, it allows us to really look at our core instruction. It really allows us to see what interventions we need to provide. And it allows us to be informed about what's working in our classrooms and what isn't. So it is actually a direct correlation.
Well, I definitely appreciate all that. I just had taken note of 3 requests for returns of information. One, we asked for a return on our language learners experience. So linguistically responsive, how linguistically responsive is this grading practice? We also asked to identify the modified diploma and the ORS change and how that increased or decreased modified diplomas. And the last thing is just what I asked, the state correlation, any grading that we have behind there. My mic is still not, it's still in and out. That's okay. So those are the 3 takeaways I got from the day. Thank you guys for your presentation and your work behind this and the work that you currently are doing with this. I look forward to hearing back on this stuff and being able to give that to our directors. And I look forward to hearing how this keeps working and moving forward. So thank you guys. Work session is adjourned. It is 6:29. We will reconvene at 6:37. So give yourself about 7 minutes to go to the bathroom. Thank you guys.
Oh, Donna, I didn't listen for
Flag salute, Director McVeigh, can you lead us? Okay, first thing on our agenda to approve our meeting minutes from April 28th, 2022. Open the floor for a motion. Director Benaloga,
I move we approve the minutes from April 28th, 2022.
do I have a second?
Director Way, second, sorry.
I saw him pushing. I was like, okay, it's been properly moved and approved and second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Schrader and Perez, directors online, how do you vote?
I wasn't at the meeting on the 28th, Chair.
So are you abstaining?
I'll abstain.
Okay, Director Schrader? Okay, hearing none. Do you have that, Donna? So we have 5.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can?
She doesn't have the vote either. Okay, we've got 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and I can't hear Director Schrader at this time. Okay, consent agenda. We have 4 items: employment changes, travel requests from Saving Schellerberg Center, Cosmetology to Skills USA, and travel requests from Agency Nelson High School Dance Team. Open floor for an approval.
McVeigh, move approval.
Properly moved. Second.
Way, second.
Actually, proper move in a second. Donna, you got that? Excellent. Any discussion needed? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Schrader, I heard an aye. Perez?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously passes. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is our community comments. We currently have 12 people. Oh, where's my 12? Yeah, he said that he counted it for me. Yeah. Okay. Any individual desiring to speak may indicate their desire by submitting their name, city of residence, either email address or phone number, and the group, if any, that is requested on the sign-in sheet or online from form prior to the board meeting. I will say this is a requirement. It is part of our policy, and most of you have not done that. A speaker should give their name, city of residence, and the group, if any, that is represented, and will limit their presentations to 3 minutes. If there are more patrons desiring to present comments than time allotted, the board chair has the authority to reduce the presentation time for individual speakers or institute a prioritization process with attention to order of sign up and city of residence. Speakers may offer objective criticisms of district operations and programs that are of concern to them. The board is restricted from hearing and will not consider complaints regarding any individual staff, district staff member, or any person connected with the district. As an organization centered around youth and their positive development, all speakers will model respectful public comment and be mindful of civil discourse. The board vests in its chair or other presiding officer authority to terminate the remarks of any individual when those remarks do not adhere to the rules established in this policy. There's a clock up there. Like I said, we have 12 speakers. We'll start with Kristen Stevens. Please state your name and the city that you're from. Are you all speakers together? Okay. If you have any signs, you can't block anyone behind you. So just make sure you're not blocking anyone's view. So just for clarity, is there more than one speaker from this speaking?
We're speaking. We've all signed up.
Are you all speaking now? Okay, so who am I? I called up Kristen. No, I didn't say Tristan. I said Kristen Stevens. Who's that? Okay.
Amy Reiner.
Okay. I have the right to have any order that I see applicable. So even though you've signed up second, and this is not just for you, this is for everyone, the order is based on preference, based on our policy. So I know you all are here together. You can pick one to speak for each other, or you can wait until I call you. Okay, so Kristen, you are first. And the time begins after you state your name and city.
Okay.
If you could have a seat, just so folks can see.
My name's Kristen, and I am from Happy Valley. As a parent with 2 kids in the district, I want to have faith that my kids are safe when I send them to their schools. My faith in the school system has been shattered. I spoke last month about how our inappropriate sexual explicit books are in our library, and not one person from the district or the board reached out to me for the list of our concern for our children. Parents, wake up. The school chose to ignore me when I shed light on what the material that your children could see that was pornographic. This is how they respond to our library books. Then what other content could they be exposed to in the classroom and they would turn a blind eye? If a teacher or a principal acted sexually inappropriate in a classroom, like what happened at Oregon Trail Elementary, where kids were told how they could bind their breasts and tuck their penises, or how the administrator prefers to have intimate sex with men or women, and again, they chose to be silent. Where is the tolerance level when protecting our children? For me, I have absolutely no tolerance for any of this. We as parents no longer trust you as a board to protect our children. You have proven to remain silent when situations and pornographic material have been exposed. Parents, wake up, pull your children out, as nothing will change here in our district until we decide no more. No more sexually focused talks, no more pornographic material, no more secret clubs that meet during lunches, no more. Parents, wake up. This is grooming and this is indoctrination, and this is what looks like when they are no longer your children.
Next on the list is Amy Reiner.
My name is Amy Reiner, and I live in Damascus and have a child within the school district. An investigation must be completed with the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and any other pertinent law enforcement agency for the North Clackamas County School District for possession of sexually explicit materials involving children that were placed in our Clackamas County School District Library and on the North Clackamas County website. This is the direct violation of ORS 163.688, possession of material depicting sexual explicit conduct of a child in the first degree. This also violates federal law 18 U.S. Code 2252, certain activities related to material involving the sexual exploitation of minors in our public schools. We parents are concerned with the age inappropriate books that we object to having in our school libraries. Next year, this gender ideology weaves into every part of the curriculum and not giving the parent the opportunity to pull their child out of that particular lesson plan. We will continue to ask for more transparency, such as who signed off with allowing these type of inappropriate age books in our libraries without parental consent. Where did the funding come from to put these type of books in our library? And did the district give the parents an opportunity to voice our concerns with the content of these books?
In order for more parents to gain more transparency within this school district, my friend will now serve each board member with our FOIA request and will be waiting for your reply to our concerning
Sorry,
questions.
you can give
Thank
it
you.
to that person over there and we will get it later. Thank you.
The board and the superintendent.
Thank you. Next on the list is Maya Zahn, and please help me if I pronounce your last name incorrectly.
My name is Maya Zom.
Excellent.
And
And
I
city.
live in Clackamas County.
Thank you.
And I'm a parent of two Oregon Trail students. And I'm just here to briefly talk about how much I appreciate the teachers and the school counselor at Oregon Trail and how much they support my children and other children. And I'm very proud for my children to go to Oregon Trail, and they've grown and become just amazing children because of their experience there. So that's it.
Thank you. Angela Peterson.
Hello, I'm Angela Peterson from Oregon City, which is in the school district boundaries. I just wanted to make sure that you know that you've been legally served with those FOIAs in regards to the pornographic material that this board has overseen, along with the superintendent, being in our children's libraries. And I hope that you take this seriously because we're not going away.
Thank you. Tristan Sakamoto.
My name is Tristan Sakamoto, and I'm here as a parent of a teenager and an informed
Sorry,
and
can you state your city, please?
Clackamas.
Excellent. Thank you.
Concerned American to address the disrespect and condescending nature of the North Clackamas School Board. The mothers, fathers, caregivers, and community members that I have connected with at these school board meetings over the last 2 years are scared, sad, frustrated, and worried for their children and their future. We are worried for the future generation as we speak up to ensure that our children and grandchildren can grow up in an America as beautiful as the one that we were fortunate enough to be raised in. We are met with disgust, silence, eye rolls, and outright disrespect. If you won't open your eyes and hearts to our concerns as a public school board, what right do you have to sit where you are? What purpose do you serve if you only serve yourselves? We place our emotions on our sleeves for all to see. We show our vulnerabilities as we read how terrified we are about what our young, easily persuaded, eager to please, wanting to be accepted children are subjected to at the public schools in North Clackamas. We show you images of pornographic material that is available to our babies, and you look the other way. You make excuses. You pride yourselves on our frustration. You use this little piece of power to flex on concerned parents. And when I leave this meeting, I often ponder why. How can you take pride in doing nothing? Why did you make a choice to put in time and effort into sitting in those chairs when you aren't creating any positive change in doing so? Was it for you? Do you work hard where you are only to serve yourselves? It certainly appears that way. I once thought you did it for the kids. I thought you cared about the future of our country and wanted to be a part of making a positive difference in our kids' education. I had never been to a school board meeting prior to sitting outside of those doors in the rain because indoor meetings were not allowed after pulling my daughter from Rock Creek Middle School. I always thought the schools would teach what is necessary for my daughter to be successful in high school and college and ultimately in the career of her choice. This very naive mindset ended when my daughter was presented with a survey on the first day of 8th grade at Rock Creek Middle School. This survey asked her what her pronouns were. It let her know that the school would keep those pronouns a secret from her parents and that the teachers were available to talk if my daughter needed somebody to confide in. This survey shook my world, changed my view on public schools, and lit a fire in me. I initially came here to lean on the school board for help, guidance, and because I was seeking an ally to take down this inappropriate and disgusting behavior happening in classrooms. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks when I discovered that you knew what was happening and you mocked my heartfelt pleas for assistance. This isn't about me, and this isn't about you. This is about the children. I have one more sentence. I am appalled by your blatant disregard for our concerns. I am shocked that our community has given any of you a place in our children's education, and I am saddened that these meetings have become parents versus schools.
Yes. Thank you. Chelsea Hendricks. Chelsea Hendricks.
Chelsea Hendricks in Clackamas, and I have a student in the district. And I want to apologize, I do have to leave after public comment, which bums me out personally just because I really enjoyed the last meeting and hearing the proclamations. I didn't realize that was something that gets read. So I appreciate that. And the reason I'm here is to speak to my experience over the last several weeks as it relates to the district's approach to acceptance of and protection of our marginalized communities. Over the last 2 meetings, I experienced a range of emotion from shocked at the way you were treated as a board, scared for our students and communities, and then hopeful and inspired as I listened to the proclamations read last meeting. I only wish more people could hear this. It showed me a peek behind the scenes of how hard this board works and how deeply you care for every student here. Thank you. I wish more people could see this each time. And I also saw a North Clackamas School District sign recently that I'm assuming is in every school district building. It reads, "Know this, you are important. We care about you. We are with you, every single one of you." I have always been grateful to live in a district that puts the individual student and their identities at such high importance. Thank you for that as well. After the meeting on April 28th, where hateful rhetoric was thrown at our school board, teachers, and communities, I saw how deliberate we need to be in communicating that we stand with our students and will address issues as they come up. My children bring things home from that they've seen or heard at school all the time. I'm not always ready to or knowledgeable about what those are, but that's what being around other people with different experiences in life means. It means you learn things about someone else that are different from you. And what a beautiful thing that is. And it's not always comfortable, but we address it because that's how you build a caring and compassionate world where everyone feels they have a place of belonging and someone to stand with them. I truly believe that the district supports and encourages our classrooms and communities to embrace differences and accept everyone as individuals. I hope our families can do the same. When a student with a crucifix was teased about having it at school, it never occurred to me to not support that child because their belief system might be different than mine. And it wouldn't occur to our school counselor, our teachers, our staff, or anyone at the school either. They aren't thinking about themselves or their own beliefs. They're thinking about our kids, your kids, and every kid there. Thank you again for all of this that you do.
Rhonda, is it Permansack?
Hello. Rhonda from Clackamas.
Thank you.
This is regarding the Oregon Trail Elementary 2-part series of gender identity lessons that the principal and counselor taught. It was decided there was a community need to address the entire 5th grade class about gender identity without advanced parent notification. An Oregon rule allows this lesson to be classified as a community need versus sex ed. That means the school doesn't have to notify parents, disclose the curriculum, and you can't opt your child out. There were many upset families, and the story caught the media's attention, which resulted in a national printed story mentioning the names of the principal and counselor. Unless you've been living under a rock, this has been a very heated and debated topic all across the country for a while now. So to the principal and counselor, I say this to you. I have zero empathy for either of you. The two of you decided you
I'm
knew.
sorry, you cannot
yes.
speak to any individual.
Oh, no individual. Okay. They decided, okay, the school decided
that they knew better than me to talk to my child about this issue. If a school doesn't want to make national news or have their names mentioned, don't be deceitful in practices. The rule may not allow the school not to notify parents, but it doesn't say you would be in trouble if you did. The right thing to do was to give all parents advance notice. We weren't able to have a chance to preview the lesson, have conversations with our child, or make decisions to opt out. You took that right away from us. You asked my 10-year-old how to rate themselves on a scale of how feminine or masculine they are, who they are sexually attracted to, and my child had to hear how you rated yourselves and who you were sexually attracted to. That is beyond creepy, and that is the nicest way I can put that because I can't use curse words here. Asking children to identify how they identify and who they are attracted to in front of their peers, whether on the genderbread handout or to verbally volunteer that information, puts them in an uncomfortable position and is an invasion of their privacy. A lot of those kids haven't started puberty and at that point hadn't even gone through the basic anatomy talk. Taking parents' rights away when you pick and choose is a dangerous precedent to set. And no matter what a parent's political affiliation is, this needs to be concerning to all. To the many teachers that are afraid to speak up, more than ever, now is the time to start and take your power back. Quit the teachers union, they own you. Learn to think for yourselves. Your dues give them the power, defund them. If you think your hands are tied now, you'll be even more restricted down the road if you don't start taking a stand. If you get fired for speaking up, then lawyer up. I have put in many volunteer hours over the years with the school, but when that was taken away, I then applied my volunteer hours to a local attorney that is fighting for our civil rights. He represents healthcare, state, and school workers. There are many attorneys across the country helping people in their state fight all the tyranny going on. To the board members, shame on you for not having parents' backs. I look forward to the day you invite a parent to come up there for a photo op with all of you standing behind them, showing you support all parents. To all the parents out there, please start speaking up because this school district has only just got started.
Thank you. Lisa Wilkin.
Your rules don't trump her constitutional right to
Sir,
free
you
speech.
cannot yell out. If you'd like me to repeat,
Her constitutional
this
right to
is
free speech.
policy. You don't get to yell at me. Would you like to be removed?
Your rules-
Would you like to be removed?
your rules don't trump
Please
her
leave.
constitutional right
Please
to
leave.
free speech.
Please leave, or you will be trespassed.
You can't trespass me from a public.
Please leave.
You cannot
If you
trespass
cannot
me.
quiet down, you will be removed. State your name.
My name is
and your
Lisa
city.
Wilkins. I'm a resident of Happy Valley. I spoke at the last board meeting. I can see from the agenda that my request for some kind of disclosure from this board about where you all stand on what's been going on and what the evidence that we're hearing from people and parents and taxpaying citizens is not anywhere on the agenda. So we're still not even having a discussion about what's been going on, which is concerning to me. In all my years, I have known this one thing. There is a definite good and there is a definite evil. And this school district is moving very, very close to the ultimate end. There is sexual abuse happening within our school districts with our youngest children. This is called sexual abuse. You can look it up. You don't have to just touch a child with your hands to be a sexual abuser. You can also touch them with your words and with your ideology. That is the definition of groomers. So I know that this is an evil movement because there has been deception. There has been lying. There has been a lack of administrative transparency. And I'm not just talking about the sexual identity. Let's talk about oral sex, whatever. I'm not talking about that issue. I'm also talking about CRT and social emotional learning. And I know a lot about all three of those subjects. So the fact is that there is lying happening in the education of our children. And they're not supposed to be coming to school to be lied to. They're supposed to be coming to school to hear the truth. They're supposed to be coming to school not to be told what to think, but they're supposed to come to school to learn how to think. Now, just because in 1962, the Supreme Court erased God from the public education system does not mean that this public school district gets to erase God from our children that we are trying to raise. You do not get to do that. That is not your right. It is not your right to talk to children about the sensitive subjects that are being discussed in so many of our classrooms today. I don't know each one of you personally. I don't know where your hearts are. I believe that you're good citizens, but your eyes are closed. They're closed. Withholding information. No, not good.
Thank
I
you.
don't speak because I believe that I'm ever going to be able to convince you. Okay, that's not why I'm speaking. I'm speaking so that when
Ma'am, your
a
time
day
is
of
up.
judgment comes,
Your time
you're
is
going to
up.
not have any excuse for not speaking up.
Thank you. Teresa Just.
Teresa Just, Damascus.
Thank you.
I'm the parent of two NCSD graduates. I was an instructional assistant. Now I'm a special education teacher. I work in the resource room at Oregon Trail. I'm here to speak about comments made about teachers in our district and our school counselor and our principal. At Oregon Trail, my teaching partner and I provide instruction in a small group setting to over 60 students, and we teach all academics, social skills, behavior, self-management, organizational skills, adaptive skills, including toileting. We work closely with teachers, admin, specialists, support staff, and many parents. And I've heard comments made to the board that teachers need to only focus on teaching reading, writing, and math. And I want this board to know that educators at OTE value student learning. We want our students to feel successful, excited to learn, and enjoy their school experience. And in order to do that, we need to teach the whole child, who is more than just academics. Research supports, and most importantly, common sense dictates that children cannot learn when they're not in a nurturing environment. Children learn best when they feel supported and accepted by their peers and their teachers. Acts of bullying, feelings of anxiety and sadness, and unkind words and actions all greatly impact a student's ability to learn. And that's where our school counselor steps in. She spends most hours of her day meeting with our students who need extra support. She drops everything so that she can meet students in their moment of need and guide them toward getting back to a regulated state so they can learn. Without this extra support, we can't teach. We just can't teach our students. And after hearing some comments made at board meetings, I'm led to believe that some do not have an accurate picture of what our students are experiencing at an elementary level. So I'd like to provide a snapshot. This year, our counselor supported a student who was placed in the custody of another family member because their parent was struggling with addiction and their sibling attempted to sexually assault them as a third grader. A student who saw their parent collapse and die later in the day. A student who engages in self-harm by biting and hitting themselves, and a student who suddenly entered our school after a private school asked them not to return. There's only one counselor to support 420 students. She works tirelessly to support them, and we are so lucky to have her. Our job is to make all our students feel safe and secure in their environment so they can learn. That means taking time to support all our students, whether it's in a one-to-one setting, in small groups, and if warranted, having classroom meetings so that no harm can come to our students. And I leave you with this: we don't have a hidden agenda. There is no conspiracy. We simply care about our students and want them to feel safe, supported, and loved.
Thank you. Thank you. Bettina Vasquez Co.
Good evening. My name is Bettina Vasquez. I'm from Clackamas County. And my daughter is not in the public school system. My topic for today is centered around a powerful political ideology driving significant social change, and that is trans rights and gender identity. For the record, I am not transphobic, and I support civil rights for transsexual, transgender people, and medical transition for adults. I would like for you to consider these two questions at this time. Do you believe a child can consent to sterilizing themselves by 12 or 13? Do you believe a child can decide they don't want to have kids for the rest of their life? As the UK moves to ban children transitioning due to an uprise in children seeking transition services, we must ask ourselves some hard questions concerning our children and what we're doing to address a surge in anxiety and depression among youth. It is estimated that more than 4% of middle school students identify as transgender. And in the last decade, more than 2% of teenage girls now identify as transgender with no childhood history of gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is defined as a symptom associated with other comorbidities such as depression, anxiety, stress, and substance use disorder. Historically, gender dysphoria affected young boys beginning around age 7. It was addressed with caution and many years of psychological analysis so as to make the best medical decision concerning the patient. Today, you can walk into Planned Parenthood with any psychiatrist prescription and receive puberty blockers. We are talking as early as 10 or 11 for some children on a case-by-case basis. The perception one has of oneself is deemed to be unquestionable and feelings-based despite future complications or consequences. Two detrimental effects of long-term hormone therapy is permanent infertility and loss of sexual sensation. Affirmative care or conversion therapy is not for every child who displays gender diverse behavior. And by the time they reach puberty, about 75% of children who display it will identify with their assigned gender at birth. Obtaining hormones and surgery with little to no medical oversight or safeguards in place is quickly being recognized as a medical scandal and cash cow for those who endorse it. Amid the controversy and outright corruption, it is the children who suffer. And we, the adults, must take responsibility and be held accountable for our actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair, is it Stenrick? Thank you. State your name and city, please. Or you have an organization that you're with? Okay.
Oh, it's so exciting here tonight. I'm Blair. I'm a resident of Clackamas County. I'm a resident of the school district. I'm also a foster parent whose kids place with me attend schools in this district. As a foster parent, I know that a disproportionate amount of foster kids here in Oregon are LGBTQ+. This is often because they face abuse and violence in their families of origin because of their identity. That's often a reason why schools agree to keep kids' pronouns confidential, which a pronoun isn't a surgery. It's something that can be changed. And it's kept confidential to keep kids safe. I just want to make that point. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm here to support this district's comprehensive education on gender and
Can we please
sexuality.
hold on time for me, please. I think that this room has been pretty quiet for everyone. I would like to continue that. I think it's only fair. And it's the best way to treat your neighbors.
Yeah, I just tried to look everyone in the eye because I think that if you're going to call people groomers, you should be able to look them in the eye when you do it. I'm a queer person. I'm non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I know from my own personal experience that no amount of ignorance or education is going to change a kid's gender identity or sexuality. Keeping kids ignorant isn't going to make them stop being trans, stop being gay, stop being bi, etc. You're just going to make really unhappy kids who have the right to a happy and free childhood, free of bullying and free of misunderstanding stripped away from them. LGBTQ plus kids don't have a political agenda. It's hateful adults picking on them, I guess because they need a hobby. Those are the people that have a political agenda. I know data from the Trevor Project shows that LGBTQ plus kids are significantly more likely than their peers to attempt suicide. But that risk is drastically reduced, I think, by about 40% if they have at least one supportive environment. That could be at home, at school, with a school counselor. It sounds like the staff at Oregon Trail Elementary are doing a great job of creating that environment. And so I want to thank them. I want to thank you for being here and listening to all these comments. Thank you.
Gresham, Rollin, Oregon. Did I say that correctly? I'm sorry. State your name and city, please.
Gretchen Roland Horrigan, unincorporated Clackamas County. My children attended Clackamas High School and currently attend elementary schools in the district. I am here to speak a little bit to the Oregon Trail community and extended community, because for the past 6 years, I've been the lead of the equity committee at that school, and we have worked tirelessly to create an inclusive environment that lifts up all students at our school. At Oregon Trail Elementary and in North Clackamas, we celebrate the community, cultures, and identities that make up our school and our district. As citizens of our community and of our district, we stand together to support each other and lift up our voices. Sometimes lifting up our voices can be very subtle. It can be in the way we greet each other every morning, or it can be in the time we make to listen to each other. It can be in the time we make for each other in other ways. But in other times, we need our support to be very explicit. We all lose when we fail to recognize each other and the many identities that we each might have. Making space for the variety of identities that we each encompass provides a place where we can grow. Our school mission is that students, staff, and families of Oregon Trail are committed to creating a positive and meaningful learning community that is equitable, accessible, and successful for every student. We see our environment as one that inspires and prepares each unique child to reach their full academic, social, and career potential. And this mission statement that our school has is based on the mission statement of North Clackamas, which says, as a student enters a vibrant neighborhood school, magnet school, or charter program, the joy of learning is fostered, a positive vision for their future is nurtured, their cultural heritage is valued, and their physical, emotional, and social needs are supported. In North Clackamas, safety, respect, and care form the bases of our actions. Each and every child is valued for who they are. As a parent, and I should say as a parent of 3 children who are cisgender and 1 child who is transgender, as an employee, as a colleague, and as a community member, And I will say, as a former student of Mark Mosier, I have always felt that our school community has a special place because it is a place where we could lift each other up in our own unique ways. When my family was going through some tough times a year back, the
Finish your
community
sentence and your time is up.
supported us. Anyways, I would like us to all think about the power of the word with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will end our community comments section. I'll ask for those that normally don't stay after that, if you'd like to leave now, please do so you don't interrupt the next portion of our meeting. I also ask that you exit quietly, please. We do have business to do.
And one day you're not gonna have your seat for our children.
Please exit the room.
Don't forget that.
Have a nice evening. It's actually against our policy to do that. You can leave it on the table. If people choose to grab it, they can. Would anyone else like to exit? You can leave whenever. I just knew it'd be a mass exodus. And so I did not want the next thing on our agenda interrupted, considering it's very important. Does everyone have their section of the condemning and denouncing acts of racism, xenophobia, intolerance against Asian and Pacific Islander Americans proclamation? I'm going to ask that everyone please give us a minute to gather ourselves and move on to the next section. This part of our agenda is about approving this resolution. It is titled Proclamation Condemning and Denouncing Acts of Racism, Xenophobia, and Intolerance Against Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. This is Asian American, Pacific Islander American Heritage Month. And so I think this is a great coupling of a proclamation. And I think that we all will begin this reading. We'll start with Director McVeigh.
Thank you. Whereas the North Clackamas School District has an ongoing commitment to addressing issues of equity in our school community.
Sorry. Whereas there has been a local, national, and worldwide trend of increased discrimination, harassment, and violence against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as a result of COVID-19 pandemic.
Whereas ignorance and bias are the lifeblood of conspiracies that hamper our ability to fight a pandemic that endangers the most vulnerable.
Whereas each of us has a personal responsibility to prevent the spread of misinformation and to support all fellow community members by rejecting hate and bias.
Whereas we urge everyone to interrupt instances of racism and intolerance by speaking up in support of equity, justice, and inclusion.
Therefore, the North Clackamas School District condemns and denounces acts of racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian and Pacific Islander Americans, and we stand in support of individuals and communities targeted by association with COVID-19.
At this time, I'll open the floor for a motion.
Director Schradel, move approval of condemning and denouncing acts of racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian and Pacific Island Americans.
Director Perez, second.
It's been properly moved in second. Any discussion? Director Way.
Thank you, Chair Ford. I just want to, again, thank our board. Last month, I was not able to make it because I was sick. And I know that last month we passed a proclamation for May as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And thank you so much for just recognizing the importance of that, as well as our community's history. Also want to acknowledge that May is also Jewish History Month as well. And so that is also nationally celebrated all across our great country. I do want to talk a little bit about this proclamation and also just lift up an amazing group of individuals who are really trying to address, again, hate, racism, xenophobia in our communities. That group is called Oregon Rises Above Hate. They are, again, just you can go online. It's OregonRisesAboveHate.com. And they are actually putting on a community event this coming Saturday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And just a little bit about their work is what they say is that Oregon Rises Above Hate is the result of a coming together of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community leaders who want to defeat anti-Asian hate through targeted government action, broad educational programs, and by harnessing the power of the entire AANPI community and all Oregonians statewide. So, again, they are community leaders, community advocates who are really coming together to really speak about the uptake, the increase that we're seeing targeting our community members. And I just want to make just two more points because I know that there was a lot of comments and testimony that were made against another community group tonight, that is particularly our trans students. And I also want to just mention that last year, we as a district passed our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer Pride Month in North Clackamas schools. We have done that every year since I've been a board member, and I am so proud to stand behind that proclamation and to see that proclamation hopefully going forward again this year. So in our district, again, I'm just so proud of the many communities and identities that we stand with, but more importantly, these are our students. These students belong to each and every one of us. And I do believe that our world will become a better place when your family starts caring about my family and all of our families. Thank you.
Director Schradel.
Thank you, Chair. Going to read complimenting Director Way, but I'm going to read Director Way's section again. Therefore, the North Clackamas School District condemns and denounces acts of racism, xenophobia, and intolerance against Asian Pacific Islander Americans, and we stand in support of individuals and communities targeted by association with COVID-19. Very, very powerful section. It needs to be said again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Director Bauer.
Thank you, directors, for your comments. And I just want to remind people that, and I guess I don't have to, that these attacks have not gone away, that There's 11,000 hate incidents against Asians and Pacific Islanders between March 2020 and December 2021. 70% of more than 2,400 AAPI women surveyed experienced racism or discrimination. So we need to continue to support one another, realize we are more alike than different. I totally agree with what Director Way said. When we accept all families, that's when we make a difference. Agenda item 4 tonight, I'm excited about that. It's an example how North Clackamas affirms our culture and identities through our dual language, heritage language, and world language. I think that's connected to this item. Thank you.
Other comments? Director Benaluga?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I think one of the things, and I found it encouraging, my statement was we urge everyone to interrupt instances of racism and intolerance. And one of the things that I had been looking at and researching was just the incidences of Asian hate that happen in public. They're in public forums where everybody can see it. We all see it. And it's really our job to stop that when we see it. 31.2% of them happen on public streets, according to an AAPI group, and 26.9% of them happen in businesses, and not from necessarily the people that work there, but other customers. And I think it's really important that we understand that we need to interrupt those things. We need to stand up for our community. There's been a 339% increase of Asian hate crimes in this country. And that's something that we need to look at. It's not just in Oregon, it's everywhere, but it's important that we uplift that community and that we know it's not just about proclaiming. It isn't. We've got to stop it when we see it, and we have to stand up for all of our communities. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Excuse me, when you say anyone else, is that all up there?
Unfortunately, the law does not include the participants, the watchers. It's only for the people that are involved in business.
Okay, well, I thank you guys, but you know what?
I'm going to end
skinny
this
high
by
school
saying, I'm sorry.
in high school, I got
Please do not
teased.
speak
I was a
from the
white kid,
seat. Please do
but you
not
know what?
speak from
I
the.
suffered a lot of trauma because I was teased as a skinny high school kid.
I'm going to ask you
This is
to
like
either sit
amazing.
down or you can sign up for public comment.
You know, and I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, good God.
I'm sorry that you're sitting.
I'm going to end by saying hate, it has caused a lot of problems in this world, but it has not solved not one of those problems yet. This is a moment of gathering and speaking up. Yet this room is heavy because there's been a lot of spewing of things that have been very difficult to digest and metabolize. I don't want us to be derailed from the fact that this proclamation is specifically condemning and denouncing acts of racism, in particular, the intolerance against our Asian Americans and our Asian Pacific Islander Americans. This is that moment. That is what this moment is for. That is what it will continue to be. I do understand that in these moments, we may not all agree. But as I look out to who's sitting in front of me now and was earlier, there is a line in the sand that is very unfortunate, that somehow We can't see each other for the humans that we are and for the greatness that we all could potentially be. I'm watching neighbors cry at a board meeting for kids, as if this is a funeral. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We don't have a kid problem in America. We have an adult problem. And in this moment, as an adult, I stand behind condemning and denouncing acts of racism, specifically against all, but in this moment, against my Asian American brothers and sisters, my Pacific Islander brothers and sisters. So with that being said, we will do a roll call vote. Director McVeigh?
Aye.
Director Schrader?
I believe aye.
Director Perez?
Absolutely aye.
Director Bauer?
Aye.
Director Benaloga?
Aye.
Director Way?
Aye.
Director Ford is also aye. This is unanimously passed on May 12th, 2022. Thank you. Next on our agenda is our nutrition services report and school meal pricing. This is a discussion item. Gayellen Jacobson, please help us through this subject.
Well, so good evening.
Good
I
evening.
have Greg Collins here, who is our Director of Nutrition Services. And the first thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is the Nutrition Services report. And I would say the things that our amazing Nutrition Services Department has done over the last couple of years, serving all of our students during a pandemic, finding ways to make sure that all of our families had nutritious food when the world was upside down. I'd also like to thank our transportation department, for stepping up as well to deliver food to all of our families. During the school year of 21-22, we had universal no-cost meals provided by the government, as well as, the prior year. And during that time.
I'm sorry, Gayellen.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and ask for a 10-minute recess. Okay. Everyone, take good care of yourself. We'll be back at 7:40. Thank you. Thank you. Meeting will reconvene. It is now 7:47. Returning back to Gay Ellen Jacobson, please continue.
So some of the highlights for this last year are a 6% increase in breakfasts, 21% increase in lunches, and a significant decrease in a la carte, but I think that is mainly because several schools have opted out given the circumstances of this last year. And we have seen quite an increase in the support from the federal government. One of the big things that we did this year also was that all student account balances were brought to a zero balance. So in the prior years, they have been able to accrue a balance for going through and getting a meal. And we forgave all of that because it's at least 2 years old, sometimes even older than that for some students. And we wanted to start this next year fresh. That brings me to the next portion, which is asking for a meal price increase. We have not had an increase in our meal prices since 2017-18. And even with a 10-cent a meal increase, we will be looking for student costs. That would bring in approximately $58,000 if we have similar meal usage or purchases as we have in the past. But we're looking at, in this next year alone, about a $300,000 increase to our wages alone. We will see a decrease in what we pay the per meal charge to Chartwells, but that is not going to be made up by the other pieces. Food costs are going up, and we are also looking at supply chain issues. So sometimes we have to go with something different, and it may be more expensive, it may be unavailable. And so that is why we are asking for a 10-cent a meal increase for student costs and 25, or I apologize. I believe it's 25 cents, yes, for adult lunch and 15 cents for adult breakfast.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any questions? This is a discussion item, so it will come back again. But from our board members, do we have any questions or comments? You do, Director Bauer.
Thank you. I just wanted people who are listening to realize that we had federal funds. I think you said that, to cover for the last 2 years, everyone to eat. There's been a change, and we're not anticipating any other federal funds to cover that.
Excuse me.
Or any state funds.
We will have some increased state funds, excuse me, in the form of the more families in Oregon will qualify for the enhanced income guidelines. However, the state pays some of that difference, but the federal reimbursement rate will not be the same as it has been for the last couple of years, which has increased and allowed us to provide these meals at no cost.
So getting parents to sign up for the free and reduced will have to be an effort by the district, because parents are not used to that. So
correct.
Okay,
and
so
we
you have a plan for that.
We're going to be sending out a notice through Parent Square that, first of all, to let all families know that next year meals will not be at no cost. So be prepared, and that the new application comes out after the beginning of this next school year and will be available. And we hope to be able to push it out through Parent Square, but we are not positive yet exactly how that will happen.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the information, and yeah, with the cost of food going up and the other reasons, what you're bringing in still will not cover that. So it's something that is important. We don't want food to be a barrier. And so that will just be part of what we subsidize as a district. So I want people to realize that, but thank you for the information.
Other comments? I can't see Orlando or, let me see. Orlando or Director Strado, can you guys raise your hand if you have a comment, just so I can see you guys? Director Perez, do you have something?
Not at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else here have any comments or questions? I just want to point out that we have a comparison sheet, which was really helpful. Thank you for that. That speaks to some other school districts, and they're based on 1920. Considering that, you know, some of the things that you mentioned are not just a North Clackamas issue, I'm assuming their prices may also change. So I think we're still well within kind of comparable pricing compared to other schools. Actually, we'll still probably be a little under. So thank you for this comparison chart. It's helpful, really helpful.
You're welcome.
If nothing else, we'll bring this back at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is CARE, Community After School Relationship Enrichment Program Update and Fees. This is also a discussion item. Sydney Detcham.
Thank you, Chair Ford and Board of Directors. I'm here this evening joined by Natalie Whistler, our Director of Community Services. She's joining via the Zoom call, so she'll pop up here on the screen in a minute, and I know she has a presentation to share as well. Natalie's going to be doing an overview of our program. We were excited to invite kids back into our schools after they were closed for quite a bit of time. The CARE is our after school in our summer program that we offer school-age children before or after school, as well as non-school days. Natalie's going to give you an overview and also bring you up to speed on where we are financially and ask for a fee increase. However, this is just a discussion item this evening. We will bring it back based on any comments, concerns, or questions you have this evening. I'll turn it over to Natalie.
All right, good evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, excellent. So I'm here this evening to talk about our elementary age care program. As Cindy said, when school is out, we offer care services. That's before school, after school, non-school days, and during breaks. Within that program, we offer a lot of academic enrichment. That includes art, science, wellness, and other topics. Students engage in daily physical activity. We offer opportunities for youth voice and choice, leadership development. Every day we have intentional time for mindfulness and social skills. We offer homework and literacy supports. And during this school year, we were able to offer a free meal program through the expanded federal meal funding that Greg had mentioned. And we were very grateful for that opportunity to expand free meals after school as well as during the school day. This is a snapshot of our overall enrollment by care site. And here you can also see our waitlist numbers. It's been a challenge for the care program to keep up with the high demand for affordable after school and non-school day programs. So you can see that last September, we had 380 students enrolled in 6 sites across the district. And we had 94 students waiting on a wait list to get access to a program. You can also see that during the school year, we were able to make some progress on those numbers. And in May, we had 47 students still on a wait list. And you'll also see that Ardenwald had our highest wait list numbers of all care sites. As we've tried to keep up with that demand, we did add a brand new care program site this year. This is our second new site in 4 years. So that's a lot of expansion for us. And it's been wonderful to join the Spring Mountain community and bring in a new staff team for that site and serve students at that location. Here you'll see a snapshot of care enrollment by elementary school of origin. Happy Valley has the most students represented in the care program, followed by Ardenwald. And I would also mention that some of the schools here that have lower care participation, including Lot Whitcomb, Seth Llewellyn, Oak Grove, and Riverside are also served by 21st Century grant-funded programs. So students from those schools have the option of attending CARE or attending a free grant-funded program that's specific to their schools. Right. Last summer, we opened up again for in-person programs for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic. And we were actually able to offer those programs for free due to the support of the state summer learning grant. It was a wonderful summer having students back in buildings, getting to host fun events, and you can see the joy that's represented in these photos. We offered those programs at 2 locations. We were at Linwood and Happy Valley, and we had 186 students participate over the course of the summer. During our school year programs, students attend a 1-hour enrichment class each day after school, and you'll see a sampling of some of the enrichment opportunities that we offered this year. Some student favorites that I got to see in person included astronomy. That was extremely engaging as they studied outer space. And I also particularly enjoyed getting to see some of the food truck project-based learning projects. Students designed a business plan and decided what they would sell and then actually modeled out their food truck. And that was extremely popular. Every year, we gather feedback from the families that we serve. This year, we were pleased to have a 24% response rate for that survey. That survey told us that 94% of parents were satisfied or very satisfied with the program quality of the program their students were participating in. And overall, one of the most common themes that came up in that survey was the appreciation of families for caring and engaged staff members. I saw lots of staff members named specifically by families for the care that they showed to their student. Families also reported that their students really enjoy attending programs, that it helps to keep them engaged in school, that they have something to look forward to at the end of their day that keeps them excited about learning. We did get some feedback on some of our programs and areas where we can improve. Notably, families said that they needed longer hours on non-school days, and we're working to adjust that. This summer for our summer program, we'll offer an early morning option in addition to the all-day program to extend those hours a bit and try to meet that family need. Then we also heard that some families felt a little bit more disconnected from the program than usual due to the adjusted pickup procedures. This year, parents waited outside the building for pickup. And so we didn't have the same level of in-person parent engagement that we're usually able to have. And we're excited to return to some of those practices next year where families are able to connect with building staff more frequently. And I included some quotes here that we received from families. And I really appreciate this last one. It says, "My child is so grateful for the art that she's been able to do. She comes home every day with something new and unique that she's proud of. You've done a terrific job of making her feel cared for and loved." And I think that really represents what each of us wants for every single student to come into our buildings and feel cared for and loved, every single one. And I just want to take a moment to share some appreciation for those caring staff. We truly wouldn't be able to offer programs without our staffing. And here you'll see represented some of our longest tenured staff. We have Jeannie King that's celebrating 27 years working for NCSD care programs. We have Cheryl Rarden that's celebrating 26 years working for our after school programs. And you'll also see some of our youngest, newest staff. This year, we launched a student employment program. Every site has a student employee from one of our local high schools. And that's been a wonderful addition to our program. It's great to be able to offer job training to our high school students to get them engaged with the children in their neighborhoods. And I'm really excited that 2 of our student workers are graduating this spring and returning to us in the summer as adult employees. That's exactly what we want to see. So this year, our biggest goal was really to rebuild our workforce after the pandemic. Most of our care staff experienced layoff during the pandemic when we were unable to run programs. Many of our full-time staff returned to us. Most of our part-time staff needed to move on and find other employment and were not able to return after the pandemic. This meant that we needed to rebuild our workforce almost from scratch when it came to part-time staff. On top of that, we knew that we needed to provide additional supports this year for student mindfulness, social skills, and community building. Many of our children hadn't been in community in person and need a lot of support to be kind to each other and to build those skills back up. And of course, we had to follow a program model that followed our state and local guidance as it changed through the year. On top of that, we stayed focused on our equity goals. That includes specifically building a workforce that reflects the racial, cultural, and linguistic identity of our students so that they are represented with those adults that they're connecting to. We worked to increase equitable access to our program. This year, we worked closely with school social workers and counselors. We provided emergency placements for students and families experiencing crisis. That included students whose families were experiencing domestic violence or had changes in foster care placement or other situations which meant that they needed immediate access to a safe environment after school. Rebuilding our workforce was certainly our greatest challenge of the year. Just to give you a snapshot of what that looked like, this year we conducted 58 interviews for our part-time positions. We issued 31 employment offers. And from there, we onboarded 19 new part-time care professionals, 2 new site coordinators, and an inclusion specialist. So that was a tremendous effort to build back up our staffing levels. On top of that, we worked through substitute shortages as we experienced high levels of staff absences this year. And then statewide, Oregon is experiencing a lack of school-age care providers. This is a issue across our nation, and then definitely a pressing issue for Oregon. And specific to Clackamas County, which was identified as a childcare desert pre-pandemic and has now lost many school-age providers, families are really struggling to find safe, appropriate, and affordable care for their students. So our financial outlook has certainly been a challenge this year. We're anticipating a $202,000 loss. We'll be able to cover this by our fund balance. Our starting fund balance was healthy this year at $600,000. So we will be able to cover that loss. But as you can see, we can't continue to sustain that amount of loss. Our staffing costs have risen sharply since 2019. And then also next year, we lose access to those free meals at our sites. So at this time, we're recommending a 12% increase in our program fees. The CARE program is entirely self-funded with the exception of the summer program that's currently supported by the state summer learning grant. But our program needs to remain financially sustainable in order to continue for families. We're not recommending any increased registration fees or incidental fees, and we plan to keep the family and sibling discount intact at 10%. Our last fee increase was approved in May of 2019. And we did complete a market comparison of other private and school district school age programs. Of those programs, they've all increased fees since 2019 at a rate of 17 to 48%. And two of the programs that we usually include in our market study that serve students in the Milwaukee area have closed permanently. So you can see the toll on providers. CARE is priced well below most comparable options and is actually priced even more affordably since other programs have raised at such a drastic rate. We're expecting staffing cost increase of about 10% in the next fiscal year. And currently, our families say that CARE is affordable and fits within their budget. And I do want to add that in order to remain sustainable, we will likely need to increase fees again in 2023 with this 12% increase. We may still sustain a small loss, not as drastic as the loss we experienced this year, but this is really kind of the minimum that we need in order to move forward. Okay. And I would just open it up for questions.
Thank you for that, Director McVeigh.
Can you remind me again, or remind me on student contact hours for the before and then the after, not when the CARE professionals there, but when students are?
Yeah, so we run our before school programs from 6 a.m. to the start of school, so 8 or 8:30, depending on the site and the hours of the school that it serves. And then after school hours are 2 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Oh, Director Mendoza.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. This one's near and dear to my heart, being a daycare and a preschool provider for 26 years. So I know how challenging it can be. So I had a couple of questions. Were you able to figure things out with staffing, and what is your thought for next year and for the fall? Because I know that this year has been a struggle at some sites as far as just having enough staffing and having substitutes and being able to stay open. So what's your thought for the fall?
Yeah. I would say that I'm both concerned and optimistic, if that makes sense. It was an immense challenge this year. There were days when we worried about being able to open programs, but we did not reach the point of needing to close due to staffing challenges. And we did see steady progress throughout the year. So we continued to hire throughout the school year and saw progress and filled positions and brought on some wonderful folks. So that leaves me optimistic that we can continue on at that steady pace, rebuilding our staffing. But it's always a challenge and concern to find those folks.
All right, thank you. And then I just had a question about ERDC, just assistance. So do you take assistance, then state assistance for childcare? And what can we do, or what do we do for families that are having a challenge affording it? Is there a sliding scale? I know I noticed one of the slides said scholarships. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2018, we transitioned from accepting ERDC to providing our own scholarships. At that time, we had 5 families that were using ERDC. ERDC requires a copay, and because our programs are priced affordably, that meant that families weren't receiving a lot of subsidy out of that ERDC funding. So we found that it was more cost effective to provide our own scholarship than to go through the ERDC system, which had a very high administrative cost for us. This year, things changed a bit. This year, we had 20 families that were on a scholarship that qualified for ERDC. So next year, we're looking at entering back into the ERDC system because it will switch and become more cost effective for us to work through ERDC. We're working up ways to help families navigate that ERDC system because we know that that can be a barrier too. So we're hoping we can mitigate any impact on families that way.
All right, thank you.
And Director Perez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Natalie. That was pretty awesome. I just have a couple questions. One is you mentioned a high school student helper at was that at all of the care sites or just a few of the care sites? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, we had a high school student worker at every care site this year, and it was a wonderful experience. Those students that our high schools are developing are amazing.
Was this the first year that we did that?
This was the first year that we did that as a formal program. We've had a few high school student workers in the past. This year, we worked closely with the Sabin-Schellenberg Child Development Program to advertise to students and open up a formal application process and kind of define their role and position and the training they receive.
Would that be something where we could maybe increase it to maybe 2 positions at every care site? Is that something that's feasible, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, I'd love to expand that program. It is a bit of a stretch because they don't reduce our need for adult employees. They do arrive about an hour and a half after our students do, and they don't supervise students independently. So it's an addition to the program. And doesn't replace adult staff members.
I see. Yeah, when you mentioned that 2 of them are returning next year as staff, I thought, what a way to give them that experience and then turn around and be able to, take them right in and hire them. And you know them well, and they know the program, and so yeah, I was pleased to hear that. I hope that continues forever, having our high school students have the opportunity to help in the care program. The other question that I had was, you mentioned, or one of the students or one of the families that the child wrote in, one of the notes that you had up on the presentation, feel cared for and feel loved. That's what you want every kid to experience there at the care program, at all the care programs, and for every single child to experience that. How do you create that? Well, what do you do to create that atmosphere? And then I'm just curious, this is more of a, for a child to write that, that's pretty wonderful. I mean, that's what you want to see and hear. And I'm wondering if there's how do you replicate that? What do you do to create that atmosphere? Or what do you think creates that atmosphere?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think a lot of it has to be a culture of care. I think our staff need to know that they're appreciated and valued. And then we hire for that, and we reinforce that, that's what we want our students to experience. That's how they can show their fullest potential when they know that they're cared for and that they're known, and that we pay attention to the small details, to their interests, and that we can nurture that after school. That's what our program is about.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. This was a discussion item, so it will come back. Thank you, guys. Next is our world language adoption, Japanese grades 9 through 12. This too is a discussion item. Our presenter is Myra Gomez.
Good evening, everyone. I am going to share my screen. Oh, it says I cannot.
Who's sharing? Who's this? So we currently see something.
So you can see world language adoption Japanese.
It's not in the presenting mode though. We just see it as notes. Perfect.
Now?
There we go.
Okay. Well, good evening, members of the board. I'm Myra Gomez. I'm the Executive Director for Teaching and Learning and Professional Development. And tonight, we, the Associate Director, Lori Meisner, and I are presenting to you a recommendation for our World Language Japanese program. So, in order to meet the expectations for Division 22 in the World Language Program and our courses, we must select and provide students with free and appropriate materials that contribute to the program goals and reflect recent trends, knowledge, as well as technology. So just a couple of updates about our world language adoption process. Spanish teachers have reviewed OD's approved materials and currently evaluating additional resources. So 2 resources have been piloted during the 21-22 school year, and we're currently collecting feedback from our parents, our students, and our teachers. In our French program, our French teachers have also reviewed OD's approved materials and are evaluating additional resources. In addition, 1 resource has been piloted during the 21-22 school year, and we are also currently collecting feedback from parents, students, and teachers. Lastly, our heritage Spanish language teachers are attending professional learning and collecting resources to evaluate for us to be able to collect feedback from. So the world language adoption supports the district's mission, objectives, and strategic direction. We value students' cultural heritage, provide rigorous instruction and high expectations. Our courses are relevant and responsive to the current and future workforce. And lastly, we provide students the opportunity to express their own voice and follow their own success paths. And now I'm going to introduce Associate Director Lori Meisner, who will go into further details of our recommendation process.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez, and good evening, Board of Directors. My name is Lori Meisner, and I am here to talk a little bit more about how to use Zoom. There you go. No. A little bit about more of our world language program and the language courses we offer here in North Clackamas. As you'll see here on the screen, we currently offer Spanish and Spanish heritage language courses at our middle and high schools. In addition, we offer French and Japanese in our high schools. In each language group, there are pathways to both high school and college credit available through our AP and IB programming. And students all have the opportunity to demonstrate their proficiency and earn the state seal of biliteracy. As we began our process of looking at materials for these courses, for these language groups, we grounded ourselves in the importance of high quality instructional materials. This quote comes from a Gates Foundation research article and states that a growing and compelling research base suggests that high quality instructional materials can yield improvements in student learning outcomes equal to or greater than many interventions that are often more costly. High quality instructional materials are about bringing equity to the district, a shared experience creating a floor, but not a ceiling, around the teaching and learning that happens in our classrooms. Our work with Division 22 and meeting our responsibilities here in North Clackamas means that we're looking at materials that align to our state world language standards, that meet our program goals, and that reflect recent trends and developments in the pedagogy of world language instruction. A district has 2 options in order to be compliant with Division 22 in terms of adopting new materials for our courses. The first option is to purchase from Oregon Department of Education's list of approved materials. Oregon Department of Education approved materials for language groups Spanish, French, and Chinese. They did not approve materials for any other language group. And when that happens, Districts who have language groups that aren't the three I mentioned must pursue an independent adoption. So for our Japanese language programming, we performed an independent adoption, and those are the materials that we're bringing forward for proposal tonight. Our goal in the North Clackamas World Language Program for all language groups is to provide all students the opportunity to develop proficiency in 2 or more languages while developing the ability to view the world from multiple perspectives and to participate and contribute in our diverse, multicultural, and international community. The diagram on the right is a representation of the state standards, which are designed from the American Council of Teaching a Foreign Language National Language Standards. You'll notice that this diagram begins at the novice low level and moves up to intermediate, advanced, and then superior and distinguished. There are 9 levels of language proficiency indicated on this diagram. And it makes me reflect back to the quote on slide 6 about choosing high quality instructional materials that create a baseline or a floor for us to build foundational language skills on, but really are limitless in the scope of language acquisition students can demonstrate in our programs and study in languages beyond our programs. The state standards for high school reach up through advanced high. Generally speaking, superior and distinguished would be more advanced coursework outside of the high school level. Our students' courses are aligned to these proficiency standards at different cut points. So for example, our Japanese 1 courses are usually targeting the novice high level of proficiency after 1 year of study. These standards represent all 4 language domains: reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and are organized in 3 communication modes: interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. The key, one of the most important aspects, I think, of these standards is they are culturally driven standards. Students must use the target language and their cultural knowledge in each of the skills identified in the standards to demonstrate their proficiency as they accelerate through these levels. Some information about our Japanese language program within our World Language Program. We currently serve about 175 students in Japanese levels 1 through Japanese AP 4. High school students from all of our comprehensive high schools are able to access Japanese language courses, and they're housed at the Sabin-Schellenberg Center at South Campus. We currently have 1 full-time Japanese language teacher, and students have the ability to participate in the AP assessment at the end of their AP course, or participate in STAMP and earn, if depending on their level of proficiency, demonstrate proficiency to earn the state seal of biliteracy. The materials that we are bringing forward for your viewing tonight fall into 2 categories. Basal materials are intended to be a substantial and ongoing component of the instruction of the course. Districts are required to adopt basal instructional materials in order to teach the academic content standards, the state world language standards. For this program, we're recommending 2 basal materials, 2 products for our courses. The first is the image on the left, titled Adventures in Japanese 1. You'll see it's a series, 1, 2, 3, that correlate to Japanese 1, Japanese 2, Japanese 3. The second is another textbook called Dekiru, and is an AP Japanese textbook and AP preparation textbook that students have been using. I'm going to talk about our pilot with these materials in just a minute, but we also have supplemental materials that we have been using or evaluating and piloting this year that help support rich language development in an immersive environment. They're literacy based. and they're engaging for students, so they're a lot of fun that help our teacher plan for instruction. And those products are Look, I Can Talk Japanese, a website called Comprehend Cloud, which allows for the use of interactive slide decks that the teacher can use for a more immersive language experience. Leveled readers, so small novel sets that are available at a variety of language proficiency levels, so students are able to read in the target language. And a website that is a free website. It's called NHK Online. I'm sure many of our community are familiar with this, but it is an online news site for nonfiction articles, kind of like a CNN for students at a lower proficiency level. These materials, we've had an opportunity to pilot them this year and use them in our classes with our students. And so throughout that process, we were evaluating them against the state standards, our program goals and values, as well as the product that students were able to produce with them. And so for your viewing, I probably won't show it tonight, but at your leisure, you can see an example here on the right of a student's presentation on natural disasters. There's a YouTube link there. It's really fun to watch. I suggest you do it. And then there's a second example there where it says student presentation, natural disaster, that you can see the type of language that students were able to produce using these materials this year. Core values of our Japanese program, as I mentioned, focus on literacy and using language in authentic and contextual texts to mirror language that would be used by native speakers. Students are engaged in reading, writing, speaking, and listening daily. And the class routines are based on cultural class routines of a Japanese classroom. In our advanced Japanese classes, so Japanese 3 and AP Japanese 4, the AP themes are taught and they are interdisciplinary. At the bottom of that slide on the left, you'll see a list of the recommended materials and the teacher editions and the support products that will go with each text that we are recommending tonight. Oops, there we go. So as I mentioned, throughout this process, we collected input and perspectives from our students, from our families, and from our community at large. Earlier in the semester, the students were surveyed in class through their Google Classroom and asked this question: how do you feel about how you've been learning in Japanese this school year? What do you feel like you know well as a result of class? And to briefly tell me about it. 75% of the students in the program responded to this survey. And we've included feedback from each of those students, at least one example from a student at each level of the program. For the sake of time, should I not read each quote?
No, you don't need to read the quotes.
Okay. So they're here for you to view. You'll see Japanese 1, Japanese 2, Japanese 3, and Japanese 4 student from each course there. Earlier in the semester, about the same time, we surveyed the students in the class. We surveyed the families of students in the class. And so through an email and Google form, the classroom teacher communicated with the families and asked them this question: tell me about your students' Japanese learning experience this year. Has it been a positive experience? And do they, meaning your student, have the tools needed to be successful? 7 parents responded to this survey, and here is a snapshot of some of the feedback and input that they provided to us. Toward the end of our process of an independent adoption and reviewing materials, we hosted 3 community viewing feedback opportunities at Sabin in the Japanese classroom. We had 23 students, families, staff, or community members attend our viewing sessions. Materials were laid out and families had the opportunity to review them, ask questions, and dialogue with us. At that review, We had 11 families or sorry, 11 people respond to our feedback survey. And they cited repeatedly that the materials were engaging, that they represented reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and that they were culturally appropriate. Together with good quality, high quality instructional materials, professional development is an important component of an adoption process. These are some examples of the professional development we would like to provide our world language teacher, specifically our Japanese world language teacher, to engage with these new materials, to engage with the state standards, and to engage with recent trends in pedagogy in the area of world language instruction. They include some summer curriculum work around those areas, a method called cold character reading, which emphasizes reading in the target language, beginning in Japanese 1, and allowing students to make meaning from their reading, both orally and in writing. Conduct a lesson study with neighboring school districts that also have Japanese programs, as she is a singleton here in our district. Being connected to other Japanese language teachers is a very effective form of professional development. And then there's a workshop called Comprehensible Liftoff Curriculum Club that we would like to provide for our teacher. As I said, our teacher is the only Japanese teacher in our district and is incredibly well connected with the Japanese teaching community here in the Pacific Northwest, as well as many other states, and is involved in several groups that meet virtually, regularly, or open forums that provide teaching, learning, and professional development on methodologies. And these are some of the places she has participated or presented.
Thank you, Ms. Meisner.
Yeah.
Board, any questions or comments at this time?
Director McVeigh.
No question, just a comment. I remember when this program almost went away. So congratulations on getting the enrollment up. I think it's when they finally moved it to Sabin and everyone could access it. So nice job.
Thank you.
Other questions, Director Benaloga?
Thank you. I don't just have a quick comment. I actually went to look at the curriculum. Of course, I didn't understand most of it, so it was nice to have Lori there to walk me through it. It sounds like it's a really, really engaging program, and I must say that it was wonderful to hear that it's not just about the language, but they do a lot surrounding the culture. And I think that that's such an important piece of learning language development, is really understanding the culture as well. And it's just such a strong program. 175 students, it's capped, it's full every year. There's a waiting list to get in. I think that just shows the robustness of the program. And you've got an amazing teacher, and it looks like she's really done her homework in finding a curriculum that is engaging and exciting for our students, and really creating that love of language and love of a different culture. So just wanted to thank you for your time, and thank you for having those community evenings where our community could come in and take a look at what we're going to be sharing with our kids and how we're going to be teaching them the language. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Way.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Benaloga's comments about the cultural events or any type of community organizations that our district, and particularly with this instruction, are we partnering with? Because this just seems like such a good opportunity to do field trips and, learning experiences together, and maybe even possible internships for seniors. So, yeah.
I think those are wonderful ideas. And I think post-pandemic, our teacher and our students are really excited to be able to start to do that again. So I'm not sure what's exactly planned and when, but I think that they're very excited about those possibilities.
Yes. Dr. Bauer. Yep.
Just a quick thank you. And I just feel this is an example of another choice that we have for our children. It's rigor, it integrates culture, it's relevant. I had one quick question. What is the the stamp evaluation?
Yeah, the stamp is a standards-based, ACTFL standards-based aligned measure of proficiency in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. This is sort of extracurricular. It's outside of school itself, but it's something we offer to all students 9 through 12 several times a year. Depending on the level of proficiency that students demonstrate on that assessment, they can earn high school credit in a world language. I think we offer it in 17 different languages at this point. And they can qualify for the state seal of biliteracy.
Great.
And Ms. Meissner's being modest because she's also in the state's advisory group for the stamp. And North Clackamas was one of the first districts to start offering the biliteracy seal.
Yeah, 2014. So.
Good work.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, great. This was a discussion item. Thank you for presenting. This will come back to our agenda for a vote. Next on the agenda is our English language arts adoption renewal, grades K through 5. This also is a discussion item. Myra Gomez.
Okay. I gotta close this one and go to the other one. We have way too many presentations open. There we go. Okay. So again, Director Molly Little is joining me. This is a renewal recommendation for the approved board adopted K-5 literacy program. And in addition of a writing and phonics component, the original literacy adoption in 2018, 2019 met the guidelines and criteria established by ODE under Division 22 and was a unanimous decision by the North Clackamas School District School Board to adopt Fontes and Pinnell as well as the units of study for our dual immersion program. So our literacy framework takes a comprehensive literacy approach that involves explicit, systematic teaching of the skills required to read, write, and comprehend and process language. And we heard a comment about that at our last board meeting when a parent brought this up. It's based on the science of reading. So you see the essential components of the comprehensive literacy instruction that addresses the needs of our very diverse learners. So in the original adoption process, Fontes and Pinnell did not have a Spanish version. So units of study was adopted for our DLI program, as I mentioned earlier. So both Fontes and Pinnell and units of studies components include the high quality, engaging, culturally responsive texts that we want our students to use, vocabulary and academic language development, as well as instruction on comprehensive strategies, building background knowledge, making connections to students' experiences in their lives, and students engage in text in their instructional level. We're adding systemic and explicit foundational skills in a phonics program and explicit writing program. So together, they create a comprehensive literacy program. For DLI, our units of study offers the flexibility for selection of mentor and student texts in both languages that are authentic, culturally relevant, inclusive, accessible, and of high interest that connect to other content areas. Our proposal is to continue the implementation of our approved curriculum adoption of Fontes and Pinnell in units of study. We have not had a full year of implementation of the adoption because of the staggered rollout and the impact of the pandemic. It makes sense to protect our initial investment and to collect data on the effectiveness of once we have been able to fully implement. So as mentioned earlier, our Fontes and Pinnell does meet the science of reading criteria. And in the pilot, teachers from every school were invited to participate, and we had representation from almost every elementary school with K-2 teachers piloting 4 programs. We piloted Foundations, Benchmark, from phonics to reading, and Taller de Fonética. The recommendation from the pilot that teachers did is from phonics to reading, which is for the Fontes and Pinnell classroom, and Benchmarks Taller de Fonética for our DLI program. Our pilots consisted of 2 weeks. We had 27 teachers pilot the phonics to reading, and 3 teachers pilot Taller to Fonética. 9 of each grade level, and 3 programs and 1 of our DLI programs. So Molly Little will speak more to our recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez. So one of the things that we were looking at specifically for adding to our already currently adopted literacy program for both the DLI program and the Fontes and Pinnell classrooms was to add systematic and explicit instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness and foundational skills. And so we also wanted to make sure that these programs have built-in measures to see whether or not they're effective. So how will we know that they're effective? And they all have built-in measures. They have formative assessments. They have phonics screeners, and we'll continue to use DIBELS to also see where those gaps are. We know that with the pandemic, the gaps have been even greater. We've had a lot of interrupted learning opportunities for our kids. And so we're seeing an even greater need to add this component to our literacy adoption, as well as the writing, explicit writing adoption as well. Next. And so for the writing portion, what we're going to add is what we're proposing to add is for Fontes and Pinnell to add the writing component of Fontes and Pinnell that will be rolling out next year. It will be available for K2 next fall, and then the following year, the 3-5 component of Fontes and Pinnell writing will be available. So we're proposing to move forward with that. We had K2 teachers pilot the Fontes and Pinnell writing component this year. They piloted some mini lessons, and the response was very positive as far as it had clear instructions, it was teacher friendly, it was engaging. They didn't think there was anything missing. It was connected to the Fontes and Pinnell reading adoption, and it was vertically aligned between the grades. So the feedback we got on the writing was very positive, and units of study was already in place for the DLI program. So they've already been using units of study for writing. We first did a thought exchange for community input on the literacy adoption, and we had 97 people respond. What we heard was not surprising. We heard that like the top 3 ranked comments that had lots of other folks commenting or liking those comments was they would like to see a curriculum with strong phonics instruction And then the fourth top ranked comment was to please buy decodable texts for K3, which we are planning to do as well. So we feel like we're all kind of in sync right now with this proposal as far as what we heard our community say that they would like. And then we also had
Miss Molly, if I can interrupt you for a second. So your sound, I think you have your papers on your mic. I'm trying to figure out what that distortion is. So if you can shift your papers somewhere else, then we will
Okay.
hear you clearer. Thank you.
Is this check, 1, 2? Does that work better?
That's much better.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then we did another community input opportunity. We had 3 days of showing all of the curriculum over at Campbell Center. 3 opportunities for folks to go. Director Benaloga was there. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming and seeing our materials. And so we also had feedback opportunities, a survey for folks to give us their feedback, and the feedback was very positive. And then the teacher input. So we also had how many teachers did we have? We had, I think Dr. Gomez mentioned how many teachers we had earlier on doing the pilot. And then they met afterwards as a team and used a scoring rubric. And it was very clear that what they had piloted for the phonics and foundational skills came in very strong with, the rubric was based on cultural representation, teacher usability, home connection, foundational skills, and initial implementation and professional development. All of those were very important pieces. And it was very clear that from phonics to reading for the Fontes and Pinnell classrooms was very highly rated.
We had 27 teachers pilot, Molly. So we're excited to recommend a comprehensive literacy program that includes targeted, explicit, and systematic phonics instruction, high quality, that's culturally responsive, the texts are culturally responsive. And it also includes a comprehensive writing program, vocabulary, and academic language development that will be responsive to all of our learners. I think that's, so any questions, comments?
Thank you for that presentation. Directors? Director Bauer?
I just wanted to thank you for all the information that you supplied us with. I didn't make it to the Director Benaloga went to the community and samples that you had, and you had that for more than one day, right? I seem to miss it. Yeah, but that was open to our community also, right?
Yes, and we also sent out videos of our teachers using the recommendations. So those are fun to watch too, and those are linked in our
I watched a few of those, and there were a lot, and I didn't get through all of them, but they were great examples of how it was used. So thank you for that. That helped a lot. But I did want to make that, attention that you had that community 3 or 4 events and that you used the thought exchange. So you did reach out to our community, and that's when they should show up and give input. Thank you, even though I didn't make it to those.
We can give you a private demonstration.
There was so much material. I didn't get through all the videos yet. They were great.
Thank you. Director Benaloga?
Yes, thank you. I appreciated being able to actually look at the curriculum and ask a lot of questions. So I appreciate the indulgence. I was there for about an hour. I had a lot of questions I didn't realize I had until I got there. But it was nice to see that it was very thoughtful, that it was about teacher usability, and it was about serving our students at the forefront. that it was about how do we address, this was a gap we found in our reading program, and then how do we address that, especially students with reading challenges. So I just really appreciate all the time and care that went into making sure that we chose the best possible outcomes for our students. And also we addressing the professional development that needs to happen with rolling out a new curriculums. But thank you very much for all of your time and for your presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, I just have one question. So the videos that we have access to as board members and kind of came to us, were those distributed or linked to them, or where could someone find that if they?
So those were sent out to our families as well through our parent square message. The links were included in that message in English, Spanish, Russian, and Vietnamese, so that our parents could watch as well in case they weren't able to come in to view to play around with the manipulatives and view the curriculum.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is a discussion item. It will return in our next meeting as an action item. So thank you guys very much. Next on our agenda is strategic planning, and this is an action item. It came up in our last board meeting. Tiffany Shireman.
Thank you. This evening, I am here to request your approval of the proposed 2022 to 2027 North Clackamas School District Strategic Plan. Since the last board presentation, the proposed strategic plan components have been updated to reflect the feedback received at the board meeting. Those wording changes that respond to the board input are indicated in red for the additional words and strike through for deleted words. I also want to make sure that you know that a typo, my typo, was corrected where the proposed core value was originally listed as relationship, and we've corrected that to relationships with an S. Following the board's scheduled action tonight, the key components will be packaged graphically and into a polished document and website. The new strategic plan would then be rolled out for the beginning of the next school year. I do want to make one comment before I make myself available for comments. The executive team, the 13 members on the superintendent's cabinet, really labored over the wording here. Words are important, and each one is important. I want to call your attention to one sentence that I think is important to read. I think for our executive team, it's an important one. It's the focus statement that reads, North Clackamas School District is committed to examining and improving our system by affirming students' many identities while building inclusive, barrier-free schools and workplaces. I'd like to call some attention to that particular statement for you all tonight. It has been in the proposed document and it remains. I'm available, of course, for questions.
Thank you for that. I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve the proposed 2022 through 2027 North Clackamas School District strategic plan components.
Properly moved. Do I have a second?
Bauer, second.
Excellent. Any discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none from other board members, I'll just say thank you for the changes. It actually made it shorter. And so appreciate that work and appreciate all the work that everyone did to get this document ready for us. With that being said, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Director Schrader. I see you, but I don't hear you. I saw your area light up, but I didn't hear you. I'll come back to you. Oh, there you are.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Perez.
Aye.
Director Way.
Aye.
Director McVeigh.
Aye.
Director Benaloga.
Aye.
Director Bauer.
Aye.
And Director Ford is also aye. Thank you for that. Motion passes. This has been approved. Our strategic plan for 2022 to 2027. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Next on the agenda is our access easement for Alder Creek Middle School. This is an action item coming back to us. Cindy, what you got?
Thank you, Chair Ford. Occasionally, we have some interesting property things come forward to you. This is one of those. This involves the lower property located at Alder Creek Middle School. It's, if you're familiar with the former transportation site, it's going out that back gate on that very, very lower level. That gate, our property actually extends just a few feet beyond that gate. And there is a new housing development going on the adjacent property. Speaking with the county and speaking with the engineer and the construction company doing that development, they realized there's going to be cars at times passing over what is considered our real property. And so we figured the best way to do that legally and to make sure our property is maintained and protected is to enter in an easement with that developer, which would go with any subsequent owner in the future. So tonight we have a resolution before you to hopefully adopt to allow access easement, simply driving over a portion of a piece of road that goes to that lower lot. This does not in any way disrupt our access. They're not allowed to build anything on it or do anything else with the property.
Thank you for that. I'm going to open the floor. Just a reminder, this is real estate, so we need the motion to be as recommended.
McVeigh, move approval of board resolution to dedicate to Timber Creek Custom Homes, Inc., a permanent non-exclusive easement for ingress and egress across district real property located at the lower lot of Alder Creek Middle School, 13801 Southeast Webster Road, Milwaukee, as described in Exhibit A and B.
Director Benaloga, second.
Properly moved in second. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, roll call. Director Perez.
Aye.
Director Schradel.
Aye.
Director McVeigh.
Aye.
Director Way.
Aye.
Director Benaloga.
Aye.
Director Bauer.
Aye.
Director Ford. Aye. This motion has been approved. Thank you for that. I want to end with the Chinese proverb, since this is our Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. The scent of a rose will always stay on the hand of the giver. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you guys. Meeting adjourned at 8:58.